expand. AST Space Mobile is up in pre-market trading after launching its largest ever satellite from India. The company is looking to compete against SpaceX in delivering space-based connectivity from mobile phones. Well, coming up, we break down the economic data this week from that GDP print to jobless claims this morning. That's next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives,
and laying the foundation for the future.
from finance to defense, AI to entertainment.
And from the road to the stars, Bloomberg brings you the latest stories of the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers.
And the politics that shape global tech markets.
I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
Watch Bloomberg Tech every weekday.
Only on Bloomberg Television.
Peru is maybe first country inspired to me to how can I use the different ingredients. First time I went to Peru, trying to culture food. I never had this ingredients never used in Japan. Kind of like a wow, and cilantros, chili, garlic, and olive oils, a lot of good seafoods, completely different way. Example, they have a fresh fish, but Japan, the fresh fish uses sashimi. Now Peru use fresh fish, make it called a ceviche, cooked with the lemon juice. You never use a soy sauce. First time I ate this.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and I'm doing this live stream on December 24th. This is going to be kind of a low intensity day because of the holiday, but you never know what happens. We're going to go over the markets. We're going to go over any breaking news, give you my perspective on things. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work that I do by making sure you subscribe to all the channels. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can also follow me on TikTok, X, and GETTR. You can also help support the work by being a paid member to my Patreon or Substack channel. All the videos I do are for free, so please help support the work that I do by donating, by subscribing, by sharing the links, by asking your social media to follow me, and get the great products that I have on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get ebooks on finance, on artificial intelligence, on genomics. I have course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can sign up for only $25. You learn about how the lung system works, how your immune system works, get lots of PDFs, lots of videos. You learn at your own pace, and you can get the great products that I offer that help to improve your health and slow down the aging process. So before we begin, let's talk about two of those products. I have structural nanosilver soaps, very high quality, that help to improve the health of your skin. You can get it in peppermint and also in lavender, in charcoal tea tree, and lemongrass. Get a few bars for your household, very high quality, use them every day to improve your skin. And it's made from structural nanosilver, so it will neutralize. And because we're in the winter season, make sure you get my structural nanosilver drops. You can get it in honey and lemon, blueberry, and also in cherry flavor. Very high quality. Once you have that throat irritation, take them right away. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need them. If you're around someone that's not feeling well, take them prophylactically. And what this will do is create the secretions, neutralize, and protect your oral pharynx. Really important. Make sure you have them available. You never know when you need them. They're very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Overall, if you look at the broader trend of jobless claims over the past few months, it's kind of reinforcing that low fire environment that we just continue to be in.
Yeah, John writing just out with his note from Green Capital, Katarina saying, listen, jobless claims have shown no meaningful increase in layoffs in the whole of 2025. And moreover, the 4-week average is below the average for 2025. Does this mean the Fed is free to do nothing in January and maybe even beyond?
I think it certainly kind of bolsters the case for them to perhaps keep rates on hold at this point. It seems that they're leaning in that direction anyway. They delivered 3 rate cuts this year. That came after a full percentage point of cuts last year. So I think, it sounds like they're kind of ready to perhaps take a pause, and data like this that kind of keeps things steady right now in the labor market will certainly support that.
What about the big GDP surprise to the upside that we got just the other day? How much does the Fed take that into account for the January meeting, considering that it was somewhat backward looking?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It was pretty backward looking, right? It's for the third quarter of 2025. But I think it will, what it will do is kind of lend a bit more confidence to the more hawkish faction of the Fed, the people that were already starting to get really reluctant about some of these rate cuts that we had this year. Those Fed officials will probably feel a bit vindicated in that position and will feel even more apprehensive about cutting further, because that data really showed that the economy had quite a bit of momentum, especially from the consumer. And that's where you can really start to get some inflation.
Katarina, we do have a 7-year auction at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Will we know anything from appetite at this particular auction, given how low liquidity a day it is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough day, right? Christmas Eve, it's really coming right before Santa's supposed to be delivering our presents. So I think it's a tough day for anything like that. I don't know that we can really take a lot of signal today from anything that's going on in the markets. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Okay, it is Christmas Eve. The consumer is definitely on the mind, Katarina. You had mentioned the consumer and potentially inflationary pressures picking up. Just talk to us about kind of what economists are expecting for next year when it comes to the consumer. I'm hearing a lot of people say K-shaped economy.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think economists are optimistic in general when you look into next year. Of course, we're coming off a year with a fantastic stock market, right? We saw those new records yesterday. And that's really bolstering spending, especially at the top end. For the lower end of consumers this year, especially the end of this year, has been rough. We've seen spending really come off for those folks this year. So into next year, it's really going to have to depend on what happens. I think there's some optimism that maybe some of the tax legislation that we had this year could help, on in terms of no taxes for overtime pay and tips. Something like that could maybe help people on the lower end. We'll just have to see if it really makes a dent and makes a difference for those folks.
Katarina, prepare us for next week, because it feels like it should be an even quieter week, but we do also have some more releases, including the FOMC meeting minutes. Will there be anything we should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think what I'm really going to be looking for in those minutes is further signs of this growing disagreement among Fed officials. We've clearly seen that there's a pretty big split among those that are really ready to not raise rates anymore and those that still want to cut rates anymore, and those that want to keep cutting. So it'll be interesting to see just how that was talked about, how that was discussed at the last meeting. Whether people expressed concern about certain parts of the economy, about what's going on in the labor market, whether there was more concern about inflationary pressures, whether that cohort is growing in numbers. So I think there'll be a lot to read through. and may give us some hints about what's to come at their next meeting, which of course is at the end of January.
All right, Katerina, thank you so much, and for all of your context all year. That is Bloomberg's Katerina Savaiva. Let's get a quick check on futures now. Just a few minutes before the opening bell, we flipped negative again, at least for S&P 500 futures and Russell 2000 futures. Don't forget the Russell 2000 had been outperforming, but we've been pipped to the post. The Nasdaq 100 doing well after the stocks had its last 4 days of a rally, more than 7% of a rally for those chip companies. We'll see how things do today, but we're effectively unchanged. Coming up, a look ahead at how market.
All right, we're going to go to CNBC about the K-shaped recovery. This is the Foreman CEA chair, Jason Furman. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the cleanse. This is 30 parts per million, or max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Take a teaspoon a day, every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and swallow it. This will help to boost up your immune system, neutralize anything that you may have, improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, maintain the mucosal barrier, and improve the epithelial cells. When you do this, this will help to boost up the immune system. In addition, if you're not feeling well and you need to neutralize, swish it in your mouth, take a tablespoon or two, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and swallow it. All right? Keep doing that until you start feeling better. If you're around someone that's not feeling well because of the season, the winter season, then you can take a tablespoon or two prophylactically. But the point here is to take it every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years. It helps to neutralize and helps to boost up the immune system. And when you are less sick, you are actually slowing down the aging process. Now, in terms of this season, the winter season, and maybe people aren't feeling well, also consider the toothpaste. The toothpaste is structural nanosilver. Use that every day. That will help to neutralize and improve your oral cavity. And the gels, the gels that I have, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your, in your ears, a little bit in your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils, and that will help to neutralize, protect, create a protective barrier. And also, if you have drainage, a runny nose, that gel will help to slow that down. And the gel will also reduce the soreness of a stuffed up nose. So please take a look at the products that I have on my store. That will help a little bit. And also, the magnesium, zinc will boost up the immune system. Magnesium also helps with brain function, super important. Magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. And vitamin C and magnesium boosts up the immune system, helps with the skin health, and helps with brain function. Take them together, especially during the winter season, to help to mitigate if you contract something. And this will also help to boost up that immune system. And also, vitamin D3 is super important. Why? Especially for the winter season. This will help to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. A lot of cells that are infected, their apoptosis pathway is hijacked by the pathogen. So the best way to get rid of it is to get the cells to go into apoptosis. Vitamin D3 helps to do that. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium. If you do resistance training, it's going to help with bone density. And vitamin D3, the efficacy increases when you take it with magnesium. Magnesium will increase the efficacy of D3. Vitamin D3 also helps with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. A lot of people don't have enough D3. Therefore, your genes aren't expressing well. And don't be surprised that you're not having a robust immune system because your genes aren't being expressed well due to lower D3. But it's really important to take D3 throughout the year, but especially during the winter season. All right, let's listen into CNBC.
Our next guest says economic data is sending contradictory signals. Jason Furman is here. He's making that argument in a New York Times op-ed. Jason, of course, was the chairman of President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors. He's now a professor at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Good morning to you. We have this hot number. I point to Joe because Joe was mentioning it earlier. I assume you have to be happy about 4.3%.
Oh, yeah, 4.3% growth.
GDP growth, right?
Great, yeah.
Do you believe it's real? Do you believe it's sustainable?
I'm not sure. Every time you see a really high number, you want to shade back towards normal. Just like when we saw a really low number in the first quarter, we wanted to shade back towards normal. Some things like the extraordinary growth in net exports was a big part of that. I don't think something like that will last. But even stripping all that noise away, you're still left with something quite good.
And when you think about what comes next for 2026, where's this all head?
The strange thing here is we have the unemployment rate rising pretty quickly. Usually when it starts to rise a bit, it rises a lot and you end up in recession. So if all you had were the job numbers, we'd all be doing our recession probabilities right now. Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Is it 70%? But then we have this GDP growth number, and that just gives us our boom
But
probability.
is this a productivity story then? Or by the way, when you look at the unemployment piece of it, what do you ascribe that to? Is that an AI situation?
The hope is that it was just the huge number of federal workers laid off. It was the largest 2-month job loss for federal workers outside of census workers that we've ever seen. And so maybe that's just temporarily scrambling the unemployment number. But, these data get revised. It's a very cloudy picture, especially during the shutdown. A lot of it, this affected the jobs.
Do you believe, by the way, I should ask, maybe this sounds like a political question. Do you believe these numbers?
Absolutely.
You do?
100%.
Okay, so there's no question about the BLS or this or that. Now, by the way,
I believe that they're not politicized. They're also going to get revised. They're imperfect, but they're just imperfect.
Is it another example of the K-shaped economy? Because that's what everyone will say. Rich people are still spending. And so this number isn't necessarily going to translate into people no longer talking about affordability or people suddenly feeling much better about the economy. A lot of people are still it's hard to feel 4.3% GDP. You can read about it, but if you're at the grocery store and saying, prices are still, go back 5 years where prices are, they're up 25% from they were maybe only 3% in the last year, but they are up 25%.
Yeah, I'm less convinced about this K-shaped recovery than a lot of other people are.
You think that
Decent real wage growth across the spectrum. Everyone wants prices to be 25% lower. No one wants their wages to be 25% lower. And so
you think oil finally filters through and helps with people feeling better about how much money they have?
I've been puzzled by that. When you're in government, you're told politically the one price that matters is the price of gasoline. Yeah. That's the one price that's been great this year. And I sort of feel a tiny bit bad for President Trump that he doesn't get any credit for that gasoline.
$2.50 a gallon. I've been to North Carolina and South Carolina.
Yeah, consumers are just in this sort of whatever the highest price is the price they're going to focus on and be upset about.
Here's an interesting perspective with oil. Oil's trading at, about 58 handle right now. Now, if you look at gasoline prices in 2006 in the Midwest, it was approximately $3.50, $4, right? During the summer season. And a lot of people had SUVs and trucks and 15 miles to the gallon type mileage and all this stuff, right? Maybe 20 miles to the gallon. But to fill a tank was expensive if it was at $4 a gallon. Now that's in 2006. Now, if you have $4 a gallon, it's very expensive in the Midwest or in other states. In the East Coast or the West Coast, you have also taxes on top of it. You don't have that kind of problem in the Midwest. But $4 or $3.50 a gallon for gasoline is expensive in 2006. Now, people whine that $4 a gallon is too expensive today. If you did an inflation-adjusted cost for a gallon of gas of $4 back in 2006 to 2025, it would be $6.51. Now let that sink in. That energy actually is cheaper. It doesn't have the same inflation built into it, especially in gasoline. And a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. If you another experiment to do is just imagine what it was like for your utility bill, gas and electric, in 2006, and compare it to what it is today. It's roughly the same. It's a little bit higher. It's a little bit higher. But if you did an inflation adjusted of 2006 costs to 2025, it would be much higher. And a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. Now, the way that the economy works here is that when inflation, there's two types of inflation to take a look at. The absolute price of a good or service and the increase from the prior month or prior year or prior years. So the rate of increase, the velocity of the inflation, and the absolute price. Now, when they keep on saying inflation is going down and all that, they're talking about the rate, the velocity. Some of the numbers were suggesting 2.7 for CPI. Others are suggesting higher than that, 3 point something, 3.1. Target is 2%. Prices will never go down, even with inflation rate slowing. Because if they did, then you're talking about a deflationary system where your home prices to get a buyer will radically go down. You getting a new job means you having a less income annually. Everything starts to deflate. This is the reason why the Federal Reserve wants a baked-in 2% target. They don't want a 0% because they need a buffer just in case to prevent deflation. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, energy costs seem to be expensive, but if you do inflation adjusted from 2006 or 2000, hey, it's cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. Oh, so I want to add in
to solve.
I want to add in with this. I want to add in the K-shaped economy. I do think the K-shaped economy is happening, but I'll do a minor revision on explaining this. So the K-shaped economy or recovery is basically you have well-to-do people doing okay, and it's going in an uptrend, and that's the up part of the K. And then the down part of the K is the rest of society barely getting by, or it's getting worse for them. Job prospects are less. There's a lot of ghost jobs out there. Movement of labor is slowed down because people don't want to leave their job. Companies aren't hiring. Now the question is why? I think it's a combination of the unknown of the economy for 2026 and also the effects of tariffs and AI. AI, I think, is another big one. The ones that are doing relatively well in the up part of the K are the ones that they call the investor class, the ones that have invested in the stock market and they're seeing a return, or have property and they're seeing an increase in their property values. So there's a wealth effect that's created from this. The ones that are on the bottom part of the K, they're not as invested in the equity market, if at all. Now, what is interesting to see here is that in the up part of the economy, even with the wealth creation, they're feeling the pressure of income or income flows. And they are downscaling the type of products that they are buying. So instead of going to a high-end department stores, they're going to the next level, one level below. So they're trading down in value or in the cost. Take, for example, Saks Global, which is a company that owns Saks Fifth Avenue, Marcus, what is it? What's the name of that department store? What's the name of it? Marcus. Oh, Neiman Marcus. Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth, and Bergdorf. So it's very high-end department stores. Most people can't afford what they sell. I mean, it's very high-end. They're going to be filing bankruptcy. So the point I'm making is that the very high-end is having a problem, and they're trading down. Now, if you're in the middle, if you're middle class, you can trade down instead of, I don't know, Bloomingdale's or Macy's, maybe you're going to JCPenney's. But people that are, let's say, at Kohl's or JCPenney's, they can't trade down much lower. So I do believe that there's a K-shaped economy, but that upper part of the K is starting to weaken. And that's the main point I'm making here, is that Saks Global is going to be filing for bankruptcy. And they are the consortium that owns these high-end department stores. Now, if the high-end department stores are having a problem, then maybe the upper part of the K is having a problem too.
The tariffs, the 4.3% was in spite of, or in some cases, because of tariffs. And what I mean by that, the president is saying that money is coming in here from abroad. He uses 18 trillion. I think that he's saying that the implementation of the tariffs have caused a lot of capital inflows as people either want to curry favor or build factories here in this country. I think he's using those numbers. But did any of these things actually help GDP, or is it still a headwind? Will it always be a
I'm not
headwind?
sure the president's the most quantitatively reliable analyst to be.
He uses 18. I know, and people roll their eyes, but I can connect the dots how he gets there.
And I don't.
There's money coming in.
I don't see very much money coming in. I don't think the tariffs are adding to growth, except they're shifting it around. I have no doubt that they're probably subtracting. We could have lower interest rates right now, a more sustainable growth path if the Fed weren't so worried about inflation. There's some reason to still be worried about inflation.
If we did it 4% next year, which is, I mean, that would be the highest we've had in many years. If we did that, what would you?
Well, that's the interesting thing about this, is if you look at like these different metrics, the mobility of jobs, it's been slowed down. Individuals' feeling of the job market, it's suppressed. Inflation seems to be coming down from the Biden years, but still a little bit above the target. You want 2% plus or minus maybe 5, plus or minus 3, 0.3. I mean, 0.3 to 0.5. So, 2% target. We're at, we had 2.7 for CPI. Some data is suggesting 3.1. All right. So it's a little bit higher than the target, but a lot better than during the Biden administration. Unemployment is at like 4.6, 4.7%. Youth unemployment is above 10%, which is that's scary. Home prices may be stable, maybe. So, there is this kind of like mixed message. You had a GDP that came in at 4.3. Oh, wow, that's pretty damn good. So you have GDP that's growing. You have a little bit more inflation than you would expect. You have unemployment slowly ticking up, but it's still below textbook natural unemployment rate of 5%. So it's relatively, it's like one of those situations, it's half empty or half full. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? That's where the economy is right now. So if you're really optimistic, things should get better. If you're a pessimist, things might get worse. Who knows? But I'm worried really about how AI affects the job market. How does it affect the hiring dynamics of corporations? We had a pretty good year in equities. And if you paid attention to how to trade it, you would have made more than 20%. So that's a pretty damn good year. All right. Probably not going to have that in 2026 in terms of trading equities. So there's this mixed message that's happening in the economy. And me going back to how many decades of trading that I've done, and I'll tell you, something doesn't feel right with this. Because normally when you have an all-time high in the S&P 500, people are more euphoric, they're more willing to spend, they're not retrenching, there's just everything's more positive. I don't feel, now maybe it's just me looking at the glass half empty, but I don't feel that the holiday season is as cheerful as it should be when you compare it to other end of the season all-time high stock prices. Right? So something just doesn't feel right. I suspect a big part of that is maybe the aftershock of 2020 and the crisis that we had. And costs of certain goods and services are more expensive because of inflation. And this unease about AI, this unease about like, what does this mean for the job market? Something doesn't feel right during this holiday season.
It's a big, beautiful bill. Would you attribute it to AI? Would you attribute it to deregulation?
My guess is if we get 4%, it's AI, and AI has showed up so far on the demand side. We're not really seeing it very much on the supply side with productivity growth. To get something like 4% growth, I think without a lot of inflation, by the way, then I think we'd really need to see AI adding to productivity. And a lot of businesses have it, they're working on it, but they haven't really figured out how to make it work.
Isn't the downside of productivity 5% plus unemployment? 5% plus unemployment?
Periods of productivity booms have historically been periods of job booms. Think the late.
But the productivity that we get from AI is because
This is the point I'm making.
Many humans employed.
His guest is like saying, well, typically there's something different. There's something different about AI. There's a decoupling of capital where the economic theories are going to break down. Typically, when you have more productivity, you'll hire more. Well, there's something different here. There's something not right. Now, I know a little bit about economics, and I can't explain, and I have not heard any economist explain with any level of accuracy or level of what's the word I'm looking for? Any level of fidelity that explains the decoupling of capital and labor because of AI. Capitalism is all about this coupling of money and labor. And when you work, you have money, and that allows you to buy things or pay for debts or whatever. But when you decouple that, what kind of society do you have? It's almost like AI. If you have a decoupling society between labor and capital, you no longer have capitalism. It's something different. And I have not heard any economist explain it with any level of accuracy. So they always go back to, well, what was it like in the, historically? Well, maybe those are different. Some people would say, well, what about the invention of the computer and it led to a big boom? Yeah. But people had to program the computer. Now you have a computer that programs a computer. You have a computer that can create art. You have a computer that can create a book. You can now you put that technology into a humanoid, a robot, and it makes the problem even worse. So in theory, AI can make mankind obsolete. Well, if you decouple mankind from capital, you no longer have capitalism. So there's this, no one has a good economic theory about what's going on here. Nobody. They say that they think they understand. No one understands this. It could be just a whimper, and that it's just going to be a tool that we use, and eventually we become more productive. Hopefully, that it acts more like the computer age when it was being adopted into corporations, and at the personal level, on the PC computer type thing. Or does it really change things? Now, at the high end of AI, for medical research, you're going to be using people will be using AI to understand mechanisms, how the disease progresses, large databases to change certain molecules in a certain way for drug discovery, or being able to create new proteins that can inhibit a disease or help with gene therapy or whatever, right? So there'll be a speed of discovery that instead of taking years to try to discover the shape of the molecule or the shape of a protein to be an inhibitor, it may only take months, if not weeks. So there'll be a speed of it. You still have to validate, you still have to do clinical studies, you still, life still has a clock that you can't really speed up, right? So you still have to do the in vivo and the in vitro studies and all this stuff, right? Now, that's on the medical side. On the engineering side, AI generation can help with body structures or the structures of buildings and generate them quicker. But you still need some sort of aesthetic car designer or an engineer or an architect, right? So these may be tools that help speed up making things, but you still have to do it. Now, back in the day of, it was around 1999 and 2000, where Ford Motor Company, 98 is when it really started. Ford Motor Company invested in a company called SDRC. And SDRC was a parametric company that had solid modeling. All right. And with solid modeling with CAD, solid modeling allowed for parametrics, where you can add dimensions and you would build up the model. All right. Now, it was not as robust. This is like Pro Engineer. This is the early days of parametric modeling and solid modeling. So you had these Boolean principles and cutters, and you're creating things instead of by surfaces. You're creating things through solid objects. And then eventually the technology gets to the point where you can do freeform surfacing. or free-form solid modeling, go back and forth. But it took a while to do that. It started with wireframe, then surfacing, then solid modeling, then freeform. But when it went to solid modeling, it was parametric. So Ford was sold on an idea by SDRC that if you invest in the software and you design your car and you parameterize all your parts, that you'll be able to have an engineer come in and just type in the different dimensions and it automatically change. It didn't work. Why? Because parts touch other parts, and those parts and subsystems touch other subsystems. And there's such a cascade of changes that if you change the surface of a car, it radically changes many different parts. The body structure, the body in white, the placement of the engine, the placement of the powertrain, changes in the suspension, new design of the dashboard, changes where certain components go. It couldn't update. It would just crash. And that was at a subsystem level. But the goal was that you just change the part and it just automatically propagate and automatically change. Couldn't work. It's too complex. I suspect that something similar is going to happen with AI, where it's being sold at companies that it's going to just automatically do it. And then people are going to realize it doesn't automatically do it, and you have to chunk it. You have to chunk. I mean, they're starting to see, you can't ask an AI just to build, let's say, a operating system for Apple or for Windows. You have to chunk it. You can't just ask an AI to write 1 million lines of code and it does all these features without chunking it, without breaking it into smaller pieces. So what I saw when that transition at Ford from surfacing to solid modeling, parameterizing parts and assuming that it'll automatically update was a fallacy, because certain geometries have, certain constraints and are certain topologies, and you build off of those topologies. Well, if that topology goes away because of a change in the data and change of the dimension, instead of a sharp corner, that's like this, that's right angle, let's say something is more acute, right? When you change that dimension, but you were building off of a right angle constraint for some other part. That other part or that constraint may get all blown away. This is the problem with generative AI. People don't understand this. So you can't over-parameterize. So what engineers were doing was just like, we're not going to over-parameterize, and we're going to look at this in a more system, part, and subsystem base, instead of looking at it trying to parameterize the whole vehicle. AI is trying to do this, right? Trying to over-parameterize life. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that the lessons learned in automotive engineering with parameterization, with solid modeling, is some of the same problems that may arise through over-parameterizing your business model with AI. I'm 100% right on this. I've seen too many times where a business or a design has been over-parameterized and it doesn't work. Something changes. And not just that, when you over-parameterize something, especially in business, and you have experts that know the system leave, when something changes and they need something updated to update the model of the business model or the automation processes of whatever is going on at your company, that knowledge is gone. Think about writing millions of lines of code, and you have 10,000 engineers writing the code, and they have some deep knowledge of the code. And let's say all those 10,000 engineers leave, and you hire new engineers. They don't have any idea, even if you had proper documentation on what functions do what. it would still take a long time, and you'd have bugs and you'd have problems with the updated code. Same problem. Same problem. If you over parameterize, if you get rid of your knowledge workers, the time when you really need them, everything starts to crash. So there's a lesson learned here about AI. There's a lesson learned here of what to do and what not to do. Now, what I'm saying is like a larger arc. You have AI that's building out data. Hyperscalers are building out servers to calculate. Eventually, you don't need as many frontier models, so you won't need that heavy load of calculation, and it's just training, piggybacking off of an LLM, some sort of process that you're doing at your company. Maybe it's engineering. Maybe it's in medical research. Maybe it's in finance. Maybe it's in data analytics in some sort of oil well or something, right? But you're building off of that LLM. You're training a model that's very specific for your needs. You don't need as much computational power. You can do it in the cloud or you can do it locally. And eventually that may need to be reparameterized once in a while. All right? Or you can create a model where it's doing real-time parameterization, where it's updating based on new data or whatever. But once it's built, right, and it's doing its thing by analyzing the oil well or analyzing the stock market or analyzing your customer base on the changing behaviors of, do they buy yellow or do they buy orange? What added benefit do you get? So that I believe that AI is going to have some sort of S-curve, there is a rapid adoption, and then all of a sudden it peters out and you don't get further gain. You see this in arbitrage trading in finance, where if you have a certain asset class that you can make a lot of money on, and a lot of people don't know that that's undervalued, and you get in early, you can make a lot of money, and then people start catching on, and eventually the profitability of that goes away. Or if you're selling something, let's say you're selling a commodity, you're selling some sort of product, right? And it's selling a lot, and then eventually you'll have knockoffs or you'll have other competitors trying to sell something very similar. And eventually you lose market share. The price starts to come down per unit because of the competition. So you lose that arbitrage. With AI, as it's getting to that S-curve and starting to peter out, companies that are using it aren't going to have the same benefits of productivity relative to another company that's doing something similar. You get that productivity gain, and you get that arbitrage of being able to perform better in the market, in your industry, because your other competitors are not doing it. But the moment they are, then everything equalizes. So because we live in an open, complex system, open, complex systems cannot be modeled. You can create, let me rephrase it, it cannot be modeled completely. An open, complex system is indeterministic. You can't determine it. It can't be modeled accurately, so it can be only modeled parsimoniously, partially modeled. And this is the reason why things have to be reparameterized. So because we live in this open, complex system, mankind is an open, complex system. The stock market is an open, complex system. Therefore, you will never be able to fully accurately model it. The human body is an open, complex system because it's getting inputs from the outside and inputs from the inside of the body. It can't be fully modeled. or fully understood. Same thing with brain function and consciousness. That's an open system. It's never going to be able to be fully modeled. Parsimoniously, yes. Fully modeled, no. So because humans, the human species, the human society is an open, complex system, AI adoption may actually run its course and reach an S curve, and therefore the use is not as important. Or it may just incrementally. Well, I don't understand why we assume that it's going to be exponential forever. It could be exponential at a certain epoch and then eventually peter out, and that's the S curve. That's, there's no adoption, rapid adoption, there's no adoption, very slow adoption, rapid adoption, and then it peters off. And it may actually go down. Or it may peter off and then something new about AI happens and it starts to come back up again. So it's plateaued. There's different steps. So when all the companies are using it and you get rid of that, you squeeze out the arbitrage of using AI in whatever way you're using it, and everyone else is using it, you still have to have some sort of what's your extra secret sauce, because everyone has the KFC recipe. See, KFC works really well because no one knows the KFC recipe. Coca-Cola works really well because no one knows the Coca-Cola recipe. But when everyone has the secret sauce for their industry because AI figured it out for them, where's the differentiation? Some new secret sauce has to be created, is the point I'm making. So I'm not really sure on how this is all going to shake out because it's just too intractable. It's just too massive. If you really listen to the complexity of what I'm saying here, you'll realize there's no way a human being can fully understand how it's going to affect the economy short term and long term. It's too massive. It's too massive of a system shock. My gut feeling is that there's going to be a period of time where it'll be an S curve and it'll just peter out. But what happens during this rapid adoption? A lot of money is going to be spent. A lot of money is going to be wasted. And there's going to be miscalculation of what to do with the labor force when this is happening. Either over employing or maybe underemploying. I don't know. But something's not right. Something's different. Something's different. People sense it. They sense it at their job. They sense it. Something's different here.
Well, but that's what productivity has always been. And you'd rather have high productivity periods. I'm bullish and
But you don't think
if we
chronic high unemployment does not go hand in hand with it?
No one knows. With AI, it's going to be something new. I think we should be prepared for that. But I would bet on the more AI we get, the more prosperous we all are.
And that's a good other piece into this. So tariffs. We haven't really hit tariffs. Well, no, but we haven't hit the question of if the tariffs get fundamentally removed, right? What happens? Could you
Nobody knows.
sort of re-scramble the entire economic system if in fact the Supreme Court
if you get rid of tariffs 100%, then you really, around the world, then what you really have is a free market. We don't have we've never had a free market because there's always been subsidies or tariffs or something that prevents a free market. So the world has never seen a free market. We've had a quasi-free market, a partial free market, but not a free market, ever. It's never happened in mankind's history, ever. Now, but just theoretically, if we get rid of tariffs and there's some trade imbalance that's taking place with this free market, real free market, then what will happen is that some societies will have to increase taxes, reduce social spending, and or issue more debt. Now, the way that the United States works is that everyone wants their cake and eat it too. So the social programs aren't going to be truncated, and more debt is going to be issued, and therefore you're going to have to pay more of your tax revenue towards interest. And the society becomes less productive. That's what I think would happen. But, let's see what these guys do.
This is illegal, either because we have to repay or because maybe they say prospectively it's not real, it's illegal. And then what the White House does to try to keep them going, how other countries therefore respond.
All right. So if you get rid of tariffs because of the United States, quote, doing something illegal, which I don't think it is, but all right, then there's no impetus to get the businesses that have shipped their jobs overseas and their production overseas to come back. And therefore our economic clustering goes down. And our viability goes down. Our economic viability, our military prowess goes down. And again, our taxes will go up. We'll have more inflation because there's going to be more printing from the Federal Reserve and more debt issuance from the Treasury Department. Unless Americans are willing to say they are going to stop Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And there's very little chance that will happen. That citizens will say, we're going to cut it. So what do? You actually are going to lose your economic clustering. You're going to have more debt to GDP. That's the problem. Trump is right. You need tariffs as a means to give a signal to manufacturers to build in the United States, to have the economic prowess that we need for a military excursion in Asia. And when you have that economic cluster, you're going to have more businesses that are created. But if you take away that, then it's going to be, where's the labor arbitrage? Where's the regulatory arbitrage? And it's always in a developing nation, not in a developed nation. And therefore, we'll lose more jobs. We'll lose our economic prowess. We'll have less economic clustering. We will have a society of paper pushing, not a society of making steel. Now, what do you think which is a stronger society? Paper pushing society or a steel moving society? All right? How are you going to make a boat out of paper and fight the Chinese? You need steel. All right? But with this paper society that we have, the paper belt, where lawyers push paper, financiers push paper, academia pushes paper, the think tanks push paper. You think that any of this actually moves the society forward? No, of course not. Of course not. Steel makes stuff. Paper, try to use a paper boat and fight the PLA Navy.
Due to the whole system.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, part of why I think we haven't seen that much inflation from the tariffs, and we've seen some. You see goods prices up in a way you wouldn't have seen absent these tariffs, is businesses are holding off because they expect to win in the court. The administration has a lot of bravado that they're going to get everything back through other means. I don't think they can get things back through other means. Other channels like 232, national security, they take time. You can't just wake up in the middle of the night, decide you don't like some country and slap a tariff on the way President Trump does. So I think we're at peak tariffs and they're coming down.
Are you pleased with the amount of money we're bringing in? I mean, one of the things we talked about a long time about is the debt, national debt.
Yeah.
What are we at, 38 trillion now?
Mm-hmm. Well,
so you say to yourself, this is a nice one way to chip away at it? Look, we're all looking for more revenue to somehow deal with this at some point.
It is a terrible way to raise revenue. I mean,
to chip away at the debt or reduce our taxes. You got to remember what Trump's trying to do here. The tariffs and the money that came in are supposed to help the farmers and help the regular citizen. I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. Because what that is going to be doing is that now you have more money in your pocket and you're going to be able to do what you want with it. But the financiers, the paper pushers, the one from the paper belt keep on saying that's a bad thing. Because it's an inverse relation. Make steel or make paper. Make steel or make paper. Now, if you're in the paper belt, you're going to want to make more paper. Push more paper. But if you're in the steel industry, if you're in the Rust Belt, if you make stuff, if you're in the military, you're going to want more steel. But the paper pushers have control. They have control of the Boss-Wash corridor from Boston to Washington, D.C. And don't forget New York City. All right? That corridor, that's where intelligentsia is. And that is the paper pushing belt. And they don't care about the Rust Belt, the Tech Belt, or any other belt. All they care about is the paper belt.
Of all, it's a sort of random what gets taxed by it. If you did all consumption, you could do it at 1/10 the rate, get the same revenue. Moreover, you're taxing intermediate inputs, capital goods.
Right.
Over time, that takes a toll. And look, one of the goals for these tariffs was to revive.
Yeah, wait, he's going to say what I was going to say.
American manufacturing.
Right.
We've been hemorrhaging manufacturing
exactly.
jobs, reducing manufacturing production. The goal of this was never a big tax increase. It was to help certain sectors of the American economy. We're just not seeing that.
It's early though. That's what Navarro said 2 days ago. Said it's coming next year. He acknowledged manufacturing jobs are down.
And I'll come back a year from now and talk about how that didn't happen.
Or
Yeah, Mr. Know-It-All. You know, I worry about these finance guys that always say that bringing back manufacturing in the United States is not a good thing. You got to worry about them because they're paper pushers. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the complete multivitamin. This is a very high quality multivitamin that has the cofactors for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly. Now, this multivitamin is easy to digest. A lot of multivitamins are not easy to digest. Guess what? This one is. That's why it's better. Probiotics, really important to take. I have a veggie cap version and a powdered version. Take this probiotic every day. This will help with your gut biome, allow you to absorb your nutrients, improve your immune system, reduce inflammation, improve your skin health, rev up your metabolism. You will get better sleep. You'll consolidate memory. You'll be able to detoxify your central nervous system because guess what? A good gut biome allows you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep. And when you do that, your brain functions better. Amazing how that works. So please go to my store, get the probiotic, get the multivitamin. That's the foundation to slow down the aging process and to get healthy. And resveratrol. Resveratrol will soak up free radicals, increase the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more ATP, so you have more energy. Resveratrol helps the health of your basal layer, so your skin improves. Resveratrol also helps to have your cells express genes in a more youthful way. This helps your epigenetics. Resveratrol also helps to get rid of senesced cells. Senesced cells just stop dividing. They just sit there because their telomere lengths are short. So when the telomere lengths are short, the cell has two choices. Stay there and collect garbage and be a senesced cell, or go into apoptosis. Now you want them to go into apoptosis, but these cells just sit there and collect garbage, and over time you just turn into a garbage can. Resveratrol gets rid of those cells, so you're not a garbage can. Please go to my store and get the resveratrol.
Really work. Every lesson is visual and
All right, you're watching live now. I'm Austin Westfall, the Wall Street Journal, with this exclusive. The U.S. moving large numbers of special operations aircraft, troops, and equipment into the Caribbean area this week, giving Washington additional options for possible military action in Venezuela. That's according to U.S. officials and open source flight tracking data, according to the Journal. Retired Marine Intelligence Officer, National Security Analyst, and host of the Strap podcast, Hal Kemper, here with me to discuss. Hal, what's the primary national security rationale behind moving special operations aircraft and troops into the Caribbean? And how does the administration justify this deployment under U.S. law and international law, given the absence of a formal war declarance?
Well, Austin, we haven't had a formal congressional declaration of war since World War II. So we've always operated under other things. The Korean War was under a UN mandate. Basically, we got to pass through the Security Council. And then there was...
Think about how crazy the world is, how litigious it is, how paper pushing it is. You can't even have a war. You got to have a fake war. You can't even say you're going to war because you got so many lawyers. Isn't that crazy? You can't even say, you know what, we're going to go to war with Venezuela because of the drug cartel, and from a military point of view, we need to secure the minerals and the oil for a war with China. And oh, by the way, have you heard any of the media say that the Wagner Group actually is helping Maduro? And that's from Russia, you know, the Wagner Group. They've renamed it to something else, but the Wagner Group. Now, when Maduro had fake elections, who was propping him up and protecting him? The Wagner Group. So when we go in and start bombing Venezuela, we're actually fighting Russia. Or at least Russian mercenaries. But we can't say it's a war.
Back to the war on terror, we had the original post 9/11 authorization for use of force, and that kept getting modified till we were doing stuff in Libya against Muammar Gaddafi, still claiming some sort of tenuous connection to that use of force document. But we haven't yet done anything on the ground. We haven't yet violated the sovereignty, although we have a blockade in place around Venezuela, a maritime naval blockade. It's for sanctioned tankers only. There are other ships that are allowed to go through there. We have stopped 2 tankers. We have 1 tanker we're in hot pursuit, trying to stop. They have not complied with boarding yet. And technically, a blockade is an act of war, but so far, unless Congress acts, the War Powers Act clock won't be ticking, and Congress hasn't taken any action saying that the War Powers Act is in effect.
Al, one thing that I've been tracking is, as you mentioned, the tanker that's being chased right now. We're looking at the video right now. This is the second tanker that was boarded by U.S. forces. How do you assess the risk of this buildup escalating into open conflict with Venezuela or other states in the region? What might trigger a shift from posture and then over to active operations?
Well, what I think the big shift will be is if we violate the territorial, sovereign territory of Venezuela and this one. I don't know that we're looking at any military operations or active military operations. Rhetorically, we certainly alluded to a lot of things to include within Mexico, but we haven't seen anything specific. What we have now sitting off Venezuela is a very robust, and that's what this buildup is. You see more special operations aircraft, more special operations troops, or troops capable of special operations coming in. That tells me that we're getting ready to do maybe a series of raids, which would make sense. Use the airstrikes, use whatever other capabilities we have in terms of strike missions, which could be drones, could be missile strikes, could be a lot of different things, could even be naval gunfire in certain cases. And then you do essentially amphibious raids in a variety of places. And what that does, it keeps the enemy constantly guessing where you are. And what you end up with a raid is you don't have an absolute combat power, and we don't have enough forces down there to invade Venezuela and overthrow the military. Something that we've seen certainly from Iraq and other operations we've done over the last 30-some years. It's not an invasion force, but it is a force that can go in there and do a lot of raids that could really upset cohesion, could cripple the confidence of the Venezuelan forces, and force the Maduro regime itself into moving around or maybe considering fleeing, versus the possibility that they could get scooped up. And that's a very distinct possibility. If you remember what we did in Panama back in '89, we actually we actually captured Noriega, albeit I won't get all specifics of how that happened, but we cornered him in a place where he eventually gave up. So, all of these things are weighing on Maduro's mind. And of course, the other fear is that he has a very unpopular regime. There's a lot of opposition in the country. And he's got to be looking over his shoulders because President Trump has said that we're employing the CIA for covert operations. So he's got to be looking at everybody around him saying, did this general or that general take some payment in order to overthrow me or some other promise? And it makes him very nervous. In fact, he's got Cuban intelligence operatives reportedly running around trying to find potential traitors or turncoats on the regime.
Live look at the White House, time of the nation. Live look at the White House, time of the nation's capital, 6:15. Al, to what extent is this military presence in the Caribbean driven by counter-narcotics objectives versus pressure for a regime change in Venezuela?
It's interesting. We've always had the war on drugs. I was very much involved in the war on drugs back in the '90s. It's been around for a very long time. So the question is, why now? What's different now than, say, 10 years ago or 8 years ago or whatever, 5 years ago? Why are we doing this?
First, we have a different president. Second, we lose 50 to 80,000 people a year through overdose. That's more people. There's more people that we lose every year from drug overdose than we lost in Vietnam during the whole fiasco. I believe we lost 58,000 soldiers, not including the wounded, just the ones that died. 58,000 in Vietnam. And that was over a 10-year or more period. We lose more than that every year. That's part of the reason. Another big part of the reason is this is the major first move in World War III against the United States and China when we go to war. Don't you think that we're going to need to control the northern part of South America? The answer is yes.
Now, and certainly the threat of fentanyl, the enormous casualties, loss of life that we've suffered in the United States from fentanyl has definitely changed the way we perceive these dangerous drugs that come in. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, fentanyl
think about
is
it.
not one of the
think about all of those draft dodgers. I have very little respect for draft dodgers. Very little respect. All right. So draft dodgers, you're bad, especially if if you're a baby boom draft dodger that ran to Canada. All right. So draft dodgers, they were during the 60s, they were protesting and burning their draft card and running away and saying they didn't want to die in a war and blah, 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 right? Where are they protesting? Where are they protesting that the more people are dying a year from drug overdose than the whole Vietnam War? They're not protesting. No, because they were self-centered. They only cared about themselves. They only cared about, they didn't want to die. Now think about it. There was around 2.1 or 2.7 million soldiers that served in the Vietnam era, in the Vietnam War, in Vietnam, all right? Or maybe even in Cambodia, if you want to add that in there. But the point here is that it was around 2.1 million, maybe 2.7, but I think it was 2.1 million. So there was 58,000 that died. Divide that by 2,100,000 soldiers that served. All right. Your chances of dying was only 2.7%. 2.7%. But if you actually take a look at some of the old reels of, old videos of the Vietnam era and the protesting that was going on, you thought that there was going to be 20, 30, 40, 50% chance of dying in Vietnam. No, not even close. Not even close. 2.7% chance or less of dying. Now, we'd have to calculate the wounded. But the thing is that the chances of dying in Vietnam was like very low. But they weren't willing to fight. They weren't willing to serve their country. Fast forward to 2025, and we have 50, 60, 70,000 people dying from drug overdose a year. Where are all those hippies now? Where are the hippies complaining about that? Where are the draft dodgers complaining about that? Oh, nowhere. Why? Because they're self-centered. They only think about themselves.
It actually comes from Venezuela. That drug actually, the precursors come from China, usually get processed somewhere around Mexico and then smuggled in. So that's not a Venezuelan thing per se. What is unique to Venezuela, though, is Venezuela provides a tremendous amount of oil, fuel, gas, if you will, to Cuba. And if you take away that Venezuelan oil from Cuba, the somewhat crippled, faltering Cuban regime tends to falter a lot faster. And there is a lot to look at there, saying it might be we're putting in a domino thing into place, which is we're blocking fuel, that we're blocking the stuff that sustains the Cuban regime. And certainly with Secretary Rubio, he's always been focused on Cuba with the idea that Maduro falls, Cuba falls. And we've mentioned the Monroe Doctrine more than once. Well, that is very much the Monroe Doctrine, is to keep others out of our hemisphere.
I'll take it back to the top here. The Wall Street Journal, with this exclusive report talking about a large number of troops and additional special operations aircraft in the Caribbean. If we could, and I know this report doesn't give us all the details, but what does something like this make the U.S. capable of now than before it moved these extra resources into the region?
Well, what makes it able to do is to project forces throughout Venezuela, certainly not just the coastal areas, but throughout Venezuela in a variety of means. For example, the Ospreys, the MV-22 Ospreys, the Special Operations Capable Ospreys, they're used by Joint Special Operations Command. There are things that we could do. For example, we could do raids, however that's whatever type of raid that is, deep inside the countryside. We could go after the drug cartel operations in places where they think they're safe, they're operating, they're far away, and the MV-22 can, fly in a long distance, very fast, stop, hover. They can fast rope in. They can do a lot of other things. They can land if there's a landing zone there, just like a helicopter. Offload troops. They could go in and take out a drug site. It could be a processing plant. It could be where they store drugs, command and control. They could potentially do a hostage raid where they go in and take hostages, or take prisoners, if you will. But like for example, Maduro himself. There's just a lot of things that can be done with that force, and it's much more capable than just the Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is Special Operations Capable. They have resources and capabilities. This brings in a lot more, and it means we can do a lot more simultaneously.
What are, in your opinion,
Texas is feeling unaware. Now Texas is open door to new TurboTax stores. Meet our experts. They do your taxes, so you can walk out with confidence. Now this is Texas.
David Yearman. More meaningful with time.
What are, in your opinion, the biggest questions facing the Maduro government as we head into the end of the year here?
Well, the biggest question of the Maduro government is when is the U.S. going to violate our sovereign territory, and what are they going to do? Those are the two biggest questions. They're going to be looking at this thing. They know that if the U.S. pulls back this huge armada at the sea, the U.S. will lose a lot of face, not just in the region. We'll lose a lot of credibility worldwide. That we did this big thing to everyone is saying to bring down Maduro. And if it doesn't remove Maduro from office, then it looks like we went in and we failed. And that's embarrassing for the United States. It's embarrassing for President Trump. So he's going to be looking at this saying the U.S. is probably not going to pull out. They're going to force this thing. And if Maduro is dug at his heels and he's not going to leave, and you certainly hear his fired rhetoric like his Christmas address they just did, if he's not going to leave voluntarily, what are we going to do to force him to leave involuntarily? And that's the big question in Maduro's mind. That's the big question everybody has as far as what the U.S. is doing.
Okay, so what are the big questions likely facing the U.S. as we head into the end of the year as it relates to how they deal with the Venezuela topic?
Well, we're asking the question of how do we go in there and do that? And that's where planners sit there and they work through the various courses of action, trying to figure out how they would do that. They would work, they'd be definitely talking to folks who really understand the Venezuelan population, demographics, the political reality that's on the ground. They would certainly be, bringing in folks like the CIA to say, okay, what do you know? Where are your connections? How can you leverage what you have in concert with the military capabilities that we have? How can this work in concert to, oust the Maduro regime and to defeat the drug cartels operating in Venezuela? So that's what they're working through. And they're saying what would work, and they're looking for leverage points, and they're really trying to figure out what would be successful. And there's a lot of things you can do. Not everything will necessarily achieve the end state that you want, and that's where they're trying to work through it to try and get as close as possible to that combination of actions and timing and what they are that would basically unlock the door that leads Maduro to leaving office and for a regime friendly to the United States taking its place.
Al Kemper is a retired Marine intelligence officer. He formerly worked on the war on drugs.
We're going to go over to Fox Business talking about Mondani and how New York's going to turn into a shithole. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health, bring down inflammation, help you to control your lipid profile. You don't want to be on a statin, do you? Guess what? Just take omega-3. You'll be fine. All right? Make sure you do a little bit of cardio training. Make sure that you eat properly. Control your blood glucose levels. Take omega-3. Omega-3 will also prevent over stickiness of your red blood cells. When you do that, you're reducing overclotting. Super important. Vitamin B complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, guess what? You're going to need to take the vitamin B complex. Why? Because your mitochondria isn't doing so well. Vitamin B complex is going to help produce ATP. ATP is generated in your mitochondria. The first 4 B vitamins helps the electron transport chain. That will help to build up the energy levels, and you will have better cellular metabolism and tissue metabolism. Therefore, your organ systems will perform better. And guess what? You're reducing some of that aging process. And vitamin B complex has vitamin B12 that will help to protect your neurons and the myelin sheath of the neuron. Super important when you get older. Make sure that you take the vitamin B complex. I have deodorants that are dual purpose. They're for males and females, made from essential oils from the Himalayas. No aluminum, no baking soda, all natural ingredients. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. These deodorants you use daily as a deodorant. But it will also help to detoxify your body. And when you're detoxifying your body regularly, your immune system and your endocrine system performs better. And when your immune system and endocrine system perform better, you slow down the aging process. Have you noticed that people that are getting older, their immune system is not so good when they're getting older? their endocrine system starts to wane. It's not performing as well. Their metabolism starts to slow down. They start getting fat. I just told you how to slow down the aging process. Go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off. But better yet, just follow my lead. Take the supplements that I take every day, and you will have a better life. It's that simple. Now let's listen to Fox Business.
Gives you the freedom to tell your story with a professional website.
We're going to listen to Fox Business talking about Mondani. Mondani's not even mayor yet. He gets sworn in at the beginning of the year, in January. But New York's already feeling the effects of Napoleon the Pig, aka Mondani. Napoleon the Pig from Animal Farm, who wants to control New York City.
RNC National Spokesperson Elizabeth Pitko. Elizabeth, great to see you. Thank you for being here. You know, I went through a list of some of these people and their backgrounds. These weren't just going against the policy of Israel. These were applauding Hamas's atrocities on October 7th, suggesting that the resistance, this is just one of them, it's still working for him, by the way, posted, the name is Kazi, I don't know whether man or woman, posted, the resistance are justified when
and
people...
think about what happened. It was the youth that can't live in the city because it's so expensive, and they're having a hard time getting higher paying jobs, that voted Napoleon the Pig. And it was the liberal or ultra-liberal Jew that voted for Mondani. Isn't that crazy? Now, if you sit and really think about it, a lot of the ultra-liberal stupid stuff that's going on in this world is a non-observant liberal Jew. Now, maybe the solution is people need to follow the tenets of the Old Testament or the New Testament. And maybe we'll have God, country, and family. And when we have God, country, and family as part of the ethos, then we'll have a better telos. But no, we got to have Napoleon the Pig running the show in New York, brought to you by the youth and the ultra-lib.
Occupied. She or he was justifying October 7th. But let's just start with Mamdani himself. He's the guy who stood behind globalize the intifada, a phrase that a lot of people think we saw play out in Australia a week ago when more than a dozen people were slaughtered by Islamic extremists. He took a long time before he walked any bit of that back.
Now think about this. Think about what's starting to ramp back up in the Middle East. You been paying attention to the news? I'm sure you have. Have you been paying attention to the potential conflict in Asia, especially with China and Japan? What about the United States and Venezuela? Hell, we may even just take over Greenland. I said on September 11th, 2026, a curse is coming down on this earth, and everyone on this planet is going to feel the effects of it. Everyone. And no one's going to be able to run from it. Nobody. Not you, not me, nobody. Something really bad's coming. All right? And the duration of that curse is going to be from September 11th, 2026 to the beginning, first or second week of October of 2027. So it's going to be not really pretty. Now we're going to go into 2026 thinking, things are really okay. But as we start marching closer and closer to September 11th, 2026, the gates of hell are going to open up. Now think about that. Think about what is starting to set in motion in New York City, the heartbeat of America, where you have Napoleon the Pig running it. doesn't seem like it's going to get too pretty. What happened on October 7th and all the protests is a firecracker on what's coming.
And like you said, this is not a surprise considering the remarks that we've heard from him. I'm actually surprised at the way he chose to defend this. I think that most of us can agree that yes, we should distinguish between anti-Semitism and any kind of criticism of the Israeli government. We should also encourage criticism not only of the Israeli government, but of our own government. That's the kind of free speech that we stand for in America. But like you just referenced, these were not individuals that were criticizing Israeli government policies. These are individuals with ties to Louis Farrakhan. These are individuals who participated in the college encampments where they were, caught either distributing flyers or chanting "Death to America." These are individuals that celebrated the October 7th attacks, which was not only a barbaric day of terrorism, but Americans were slaughtered that day as well and then held hostage by those very terrorists. These are not individuals that suffer from anti-Zionism. They're not just anti-Semitism. Suffering individuals as well. They are actually anti-American sentiment suffering individuals. That's the real problem here. These three all go hand in hand. If they have a criticism of Israel, that has nothing to do with what they're doing here in their work in New York City. The problem is that they don't like America and stand against all of our values.
Elizabeth, you stated so well. It seems like they don't like America. Some of the folks that have been flagged by this report from the Anti-Defamation League have ties to groups like Students for Justice in Palestine, another group called Within Our Lifetime. These are the groups that were behind many of the, I think you could say, demonstration, protests, occupations, some violence at our college campuses in the wake of October 7th and right here in New York City. I know that because as a reporter, I covered some of these events, and it was really troubling. We saw horrible chants being made by these groups. I saw American flags being burned at some of these protests and riots in the streets. What kind of concern should folks have in New York City knowing that their mayor-elect, who's going to be sworn in on January 1st, is picking people that are affiliated with these groups to help him transition into office?
Well, I think the concern for me, honestly, is that folks knew this when they elected him. They voted for him. Like David mentioned, he was very proud to not disavow that statement, globalize the Intifada, which basically means kill Jews where you see them anywhere in the world. He has not made it a secret what he believes. He's not made it a secret what he believes, of course, about Jews, but also just about Americans, about what it takes to be a legal immigrant to this country, what it takes to stand for the American flag. He does not seem to share most of our values. So the concern should not really be with him. It should be with your fellow New Yorkers who actually put him in this position of power and believe that he aligns with them. Nobody in New York, nobody in America should want someone who happily employs folks that celebrate terrorism. This is not something that we should support in our country. It's not something we should support in New York City. And I can only imagine if you look into these encampments, like you said, if you see that American flag.
Now think
burning,
about this. Just think that there's something big that happens after September 11th of 2026 and into 2027. And you have lots of protests that are going on, similar to the October 7th, all right, on campuses in New York City, let's say Columbia, or what another fiasco at Harvard or Yale, and just, widespread protesting that's taking place. And remember, that protest that was taking place had an element of BLM in it. All right, so let's just add in a little bit of racism to it. Do you think Napoleon the pig from Animal Farm is going to stop it? Or do you think he'll fuel it? I suspect that he'll fuel it. So it's going to be even worse. Brought to you by the youth and the ultra-lib.
All saw over the course of those protests, you should want to, go back and hide from this. You should want to stand up against this. You should not vote people in who support this and who have actually protested with those same people that burned those American flags proudly. And instead, they have elected him into office in one of the most important cities in the world. That is my real concern here.
Well, and part of his job as mayor is just going to be able to keep the trains running, keep the streets clean, and keep the streets running. And a lot of these protesters have occupied the street.
We'll have more pizza all over pizza crumbs all over the city. You're going to have more rats running around. more homeless. The town will start burning down. It's going to start looking like Escape from New York. And this is not speaking in hyperbole. I mean, literally, it's dystopic that's starting to emerge here. Napoleon the Pig, and you notice that when he does his speeches now, and he's not even mayor yet, you notice that he's starting to have a little bit more hubris, a little bit more command and control. Well, what happened with Napoleon the Pig in Animal Farm? All the animals were equal until some animals were more equal than others. That's Napoleon the Pig. That's Mondani.
They occupied Grand Central Station, one of the busiest commuting hubs in the world. They occupied it several times. And I'm just wondering, the police commissioner that he hired is the one who did a damn good job lowering crime in Manhattan, Jessica Tisch. She may come to blows with him over the rights of people to close down the streets that he's supposed to keep open.
I can only imagine that that's what's going to happen. Like you said, Commissioner Tisch did an incredible job. People are very, very supportive of her in New York. I've heard nothing but positive reviews. So it's going to be very strange to see that happening. We all support peaceful protests. We all want that to remain a core American value, but nobody wants folks in the streets that are actually terrorizing those just trying to go about their day or making it feel unsafe for Jewish Americans, for example, to cross the street or go into their college classrooms, because that's what was.
Certain New Yorkers get unhinged. And some of those New Yorkers, many of them, are lower income, young blacks. And I saw the whole BLM movement in New York, and it was not pretty. It was not pretty. I'm telling you, there is going to be a problem with Mondani. He's going to lose control of the situation because he's on their side. And then what will happen is it will metastasize to the point. See, he's going to let the fire burn and then realize, whoa, it got out of control. And then he can't fix it. Why? Because he's inexperienced. He's an inexperienced leader. He hasn't literally done anything of value in his whole life. In his whole life. He's 31, 32 years old? His whole life. Nothing of value. Nothing. Meanwhile, his mother is part of the Bollywood scene. Now wait, what's the commonality between Karl Marx and Mondani? Well, they both hate capitalism, but Karl Marx came from a well-to-do family, and he didn't want to work. He just wanted to sit and write and tell about how great it would be if everything was state-run. He didn't want to work. He just wanted to be a pseudo-intellectual. Now, Mondani, he came from well-to-do situation. Most Americans don't. And he is propped up on a pedestal in New York City as mayor now. And he will literally turn into the tyrannical Napoleon the Pig.
Over the course of the last 2 years. I'm going to be very interested to see that fight take effect, but I can only imagine, considering those that put Zohran Mamdani into office, he will stand with them before he will stand for the safety of New York.
When quality of life deteriorates, people have a way of going against their ideology in favor of their kids being safe and themselves being safe. Elizabeth Pitko, great to see you. Thank you very much. Enjoy Florida. It's cold up here.
Yeah.
All right, let's listen into Cash Jordan. He has a special report on what's going on in Texas.
Teaching your kid math doesn't have to be a struggle. Brilliant's an effective and fun way to learn, built for the way students' minds actually work. Every lesson is visual and interactive, so the math.
But before we go to Cash Jordan, because we want to be entertained, right? But we also want to be informed. And, you know, he does a pretty damn good job in explaining what the hell is going on in America. Please go to my store and get the Good Night Formula. What this will do is allow you to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested, and you'll have more energy. It allows you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep that you need to be able to detox and consolidate memory. It has tryptophan, melatonin, and GABA. Take it every day. Take it at night. And if you get proper sleep, guess what? You're helping your brain function. So you can wake up to the craziness that's going on in New York City. And by having good sleep, you're slowing down the aging process. If you notice, a lot of people in the blue zone, where is it? The blue zone is like regions in the world where they age slow. They have a common theme: proper sleep. Clarity factor. Clarity factor will get rid of that brain fog. This is a very powerful neurostack. It'll get rid of that brain fog and allow you to concentrate on tasks. This is perfect for work or school or even doing things at home. But the thing is that it allows you to concentrate. Take it every day. If you have a job that is, or you're in school and it's like high cognitive function, take it twice a day. But for most people, taking it once a day is just fine. But, you know, in high cognitive function situations, you want to take one in the morning and one in the mid-afternoon. You know, but the point here is that clarity factor will help for you to concentrate and get rid of that brain fog. And then over time, it'll help with that positive neuroplasticity where your dendritic connections will increase. You'll be able to think faster and you'll have better memory. This is super important to take. Slow down the aging process. And be aware so you can watch in real time how New York City just implodes. And digestive enzyme complex, super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Why? No matter how healthy you are, your pancreas doesn't function as well as when it was younger. It's just a fact, right? Now, digestive enzyme complex will help to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, reduce the load on your pancreas, and ease digestion. It'll allow you to digest your foods with less stress. This has bromelain in it, which also helps to break up clots. And it has the proteolytic enzymes to break up glycoproteins. That's really important in the winter season. So please go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. It's dual purpose. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's see on how the world is turning. I mean, this is like a soap opera. This show is kind of like a combination of a soap opera, CNN, and SNL.
But Texas Hoopers are still out there tracking down fugitives. That's not a turning lane. Going down the cruiser. Now he's moving into a trailer park. What is he going to do in a trailer park? With a white van. Maybe he thinks he can blend in. Oh, I mean, he's blended in with that fence. What do you think about that? Look at the windows blacked out. Oh, look, he's got his phone in the cup over there. Just sipping soda. The last Coke he's going to get. One. How many people we got in the back here? Two. They just keep coming. This van is packed. Now, the activists are going to see this and they're going to say, oh, these guys, they were just on their way to work, man. Why you got to harass them on their way to work? But before we see some even crazier freeway chases, which perfectly explain how the formerly open border blessed America with the highest insurance rates ever. Here we go. We got a truck flying down a residential street.
tight turn. I see something hanging out of the back of that truck. That better not be what I think it is. Are we gonna find out? Whoa! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow! Oh wait, there's something. There's someone's basement. They're in a hole. They're hiding in someone's house. What are we getting into this? This is crazy. This hole was just invaded. They're both turning. This could. Oh, I guess it's someone's backyard. Where are they? It's all this trash. Yeah. There's a washing machine. Oh, they got some here.
Roku's self-serve ads platform. It's easier than ever with Ads Manager. Sign up today.
Now that's amazing. All right, we're watching. This show is completely unscripted. All right, it's totally free for all. I like it that way. But at watching Cash Jordan, and what do we see as an advertisement? Be pacified by watching Roku. Watch your TV. Be pacified. Just zone out. Don't be paying attention to what's happening in the world. And then the next commercial is about a yacht club and where you're going to park your boat. This is the problem. We have a very ultra-rich society that can plug out and not have to worry about all the BS. And then you have a big part of society that has to deal with it. And the only way they can deal with the reality, is to just watch Roku. Or Roku, or whatever the hell it's called. Watch Amazon Prime, watch Netflix. We need a society engaged. We need a society of God, country, and family and pushing back. If we don't, we're going to lose this country.
You have to take the same route. Wow. You took the junkyard or something. Man, they got these guys and these women. But wait till you hear what the driver of this 1995 U-Haul Texas CPS is going to believe.
Okay, who are all the people laying down on the back?
They said they needed a ride to the car was broke down a couple miles back, but I told them I was like, okay, it's on.
She's using a U-Haul to transport illegals, and they said that their car broke down. They need they need a lift. What? She's total BSing. Hey.
So they needed a ride to some state park.
Some state park. Wow.
I don't.
She just admits it. All the people lying down in the back. How many people? Oh, why is there a cage? Oh, that's to perhaps disguise people? Wow. So she rented a U-Haul for $19.95 and now might be going away for 19 years if convicted. How many folks we got here? I see several people back there. Ooh. And the other thing is, who are these individuals? They weren't vetted at the southern border.
You're going to be charged with 3 counts of human smuggling.
3 counts. That's 10 years each if convicted, and those could have been gang members. Okay. Officer approaches inside the vehicle.
What's scary, and no one, thank God we're not seeing it, but what's scary is these officers, these sheriffs, patrol officers, you don't know what kind of situation it could be in. It could turn into a shootout. They're risking their life. The patrol officers are risking their life here. But you got Mondani and you got the ultra liberals saying, "Oh, we have to be in open arms with these illegals." They know they're here illegally. That's why they're hiding. No. We got to have sanctuary cities. We got to make sure that their kids come illegally, and we'll sign them up to go to school so we can give the school district more money. So there's an incentive for the sanctuary cities to keep illegals here, especially if they have kids, because you get a little bit more money for the school system. You pay for those textbooks and the pension plan for the teachers. You know, it's all about the money.
Oh, look at this. We got the whole course on this one. SUVs, oh, these just avoid the spikes. Negative spikes, the real negative spikes. Spikes. The red light didn't stop me, though. Look at that. They go right on there. Go figure. The people driving these cars have no respect for the laws that are on the road. Look at this. What everybody forgets. I guess it's first on the road. We'll see. Look, this guy spends more time in the left lane than in the right lane. What's happening here? Oh man! It just does not almost it's great. These people are ridiculous. And they're risking the lives of everybody in that car. This is so crazy. What's gonna happen now? Oh, that truck just boxed into that truck driver just helped him. Oh, look at that. Illegal immigrants are getting out too. Okay, they're running off. Cars abandoned.
The Wonder Oven Pro is an 8-in-1 non-toxic air fryer toaster oven. Now with 2 new cooking functions and precise digital controls. It preheats fast, cooks on 3 levels, and replaces
I've never used one of these air ovens before. I wonder how well they work.
They're running off. Cars abandoned at this point. Now we got a foot chase. Stop. I'm thinking it's not. That's it. Oh, thought I could hide in the bushes. That's it. Got him. That's it. Got him, bro. Get him. Feel like Texas GPS bumped into the brush before you dumb. Hey, all units, go traffic. 3113 Oriole. It is an illegal immigrant, the smuggler. This chase right here takes a wrong turn almost immediately. Look at this person. Cruising down a red look, right through a stop sign, right by an on-ramp rather. Look at that. He's just trying to turn. He's trying to turn his way out of this one. He should just turn his life around and not do smuggling. Oh, look at that! Oh,
Just to divert here. Amber just texted something on the chat. The question I have is those air ovens. What's the max temperature? Do they go up to 450, 500 degrees? Let me know.
All over the road and making a wild turn. Is this guy gonna get away? He can't. It's not gonna get away. Cars over me. Run stop sign. Look at it. Oh, that is bad news. This person, when they get what's happened there? The vehicle's on fire. While it's driving. What kind of vehicle is that? Don't buy one of these. It catches on fire. Look at all the smoke. It looks like a Nissan. Oh, there he goes. One. Is the guy going to try to run? Okay, here's everybody. Look, they happen to get out of the vehicle in an area where the road is fenced off. Like, fences and jail cells are in the future of these people, that's for sure. Look, they're all going to get caught. Look at them. There's nowhere to go. No, tattoos on that fella. Wow. Caught everybody. Look at this road. There's no escape here.
The bottom line is, the only way to stop this is to push back. We have to push back on illegal immigration. And the people that are supporting these types of individuals, we have to push back on them too. And that includes nonprofits like Catholic Charities and UJF and others that support illegal immigration. All right. Let's listen to we haven't listened to Dr. Turley. He just had a video that came out about the mass exodus. I'm assuming that he's talking about New York because he's talking about Mondani. So, but let's listen into that. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the heirloom barley. This is a high-density protein with micronutrients. You can't get this barley anywhere at a regular store, right? This is special stuff that will bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals. When you do that regularly, you're slowing down the aging process. You're boosting up your immune system. You're improving your endocrine system. You're reducing plaque formation in your vascular system, and you're bringing down inflammation at the brain level to keep your neurons healthy. By bringing down inflammation, you're also helping with joint health. Get this, take it every day, slow down the aging process, boost up that immune system. All right, let's listen into Dr. Turley.
You do not need to be liked by everybody. You need to choose your friends and your enemies carefully.
Wall Street is fast becoming a ghost town, and that's not even remotely an exaggeration. In the past 6 months, one Fortune 500 company after another has packed up, left.
I know New York really well, especially the financial district in Lower Manhattan. Guess what? The buildings around there, some of them have turned residential, right? They've been converted. They used to be for corporate and they've been converted into residential. But it's a fraction of what it used to be in the 80s or 90s. You used to have lots of different firms on Wall Street and Broad Street and in that financial district area. But after 9/11, they all went to Midtown or left New York and went to North or South Carolina, Texas, or Florida. You got something called, Y'all Street, which is Texas, like a new Wall Street in Texas. And then there's a hub in Miami that's starting to be built up by Citadel. So you have a lot of the companies moved to Midtown post 9/11. And what has happened on Broad Street and Wall Street is it's like a museum. Right across the street from the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange, used to be J.P. Morgan. It's like a museum. No, there's nothing there. Now, sometimes it's rented out for movies or to store equipment for movies because they do a lot of movie making now in New York. But the point here is that the hub of finance in the financial district has been dead for 2 decades. It's a museum. It's like people living in a museum.
And headed south. JP Morgan Chase now has more employees in Texas than in Manhattan. But here's what's really terrifying to people in City Hall. This isn't about a few companies. This is about the entire financial ecosystem abandoning ship. And it's all happening even before their ultra-woke socialist mayor takes office. Hi, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor. I hope you're having a wonderful week in the lead up to Christmas. It's so exciting. And I've got a last-minute Christmas idea for you. Take a guess at what this is. This is absolutely amazing. I'll give you a hint. The older we get, the less we hold on to heat. So imagine being stranded in a broken down car in the middle of the night and having to walk for help. A simple rainstorm, even in the summer, that can mean hypothermia. And so that is where this little beauty comes in. I'm going to bring it, I kid you not. This is New York City is experiencing a business exodus like never before. While well-known titans like Tesla, Chevron, Oracle, and Charles Schwab have all left the ultra-blue state of California, that's nothing compared to what's happening in New York. Since 2005, New York has gone from hosting 125 Fortune 500 companies to hosting just 50 today. New York has lost an astonishing 60% of its Fortune 500 companies in just the last 2 decades. Meanwhile, Texas now has 54 Fortune 500 companies, and that number is climbing. Florida has 22, and as a result, the financial services sector, the lifeblood of New York's economy, is hemorrhaging jobs. In the first half of this year alone, from January to August, the financial services sector lost 8,400 jobs. In that same time frame last year, it gained 6,400. So that's a 15,000 job swing in the wrong direction. JP Morgan Chase employs nearly 32,000 people in Texas as compared to 24,000 in New York. Let that sink in. The company that defines Wall Street has more people in Texas than in Manhattan. But what makes all of this even more astonishing is that this Democrat-induced disaster was happening before New Yorkers voted in Zoran Mamdani this past November. Mamdani, of course, ran on a Democratic socialist platform promising to raise taxes on corporations and wealthy New Yorkers. And so, since November, the corporate exodus that's been devastating New York for the last 2 decades has only accelerated. It's being reported that relocation attorneys in the state of Florida are reporting an unprecedented surge in inquiries. Corporate filings data obtained by Florida news outlets revealed that multiple New York companies filed relocation paperwork in just the weeks following Mamdani's election. In fact, they're calling it the Mamdani migration. It's an unprecedented number.
A lot of people are moving. And there was, right after Mamdani won, individuals that are living in Florida bought property that, for speculation, thinking that New Yorkers were going to come in, and they jacked up the price. They jacked up the prices, just waiting for the New Yorkers to start doing their exodus. It's crazy. It's crazy. Mamdani is going to destroy New York.
Left UGs, both residents and businesses, and they are officially leaving the state, and they are not coming back. This isn't about culture. It's not about geography anymore. It ain't about weather. It's about money. Bottom line, basic, brutal economics. Now, if you don't know, New York's top personal income tax rate is 10.9%. It's the 3rd highest in the nation. But it's even worse if you live in the city. There, you're going to pay an additional 3.9% New York City taxes. That means a high earner pays nearly 15% of their income to the state and to the city. That's on top of federal income tax. A person earning $200,000 per year pays approximately $13,000 more in taxes to New York than they would in Florida. That's $13,000 annually that could be reinvested, saved, spent in the economy, except it's all going to Albany and City Hall. For businesses, it's even starker. A company with $1 million in profits faces a corporate tax rate of 6.5% in New York, sometimes higher with additional business taxes. In Florida, the corporate tax rate is 5.5% with 0 state income tax. According to analyses, a firm moving from Manhattan to Boca Raton could save approximately $7.5 million annually on taxes, rent, and labor costs, a 22.5% reduction.
Let me just interject here. Bitcoin is at 87,000 and the S&P 500 is trading at 69.26. Now, I still have a year-end target of the S&P 500 at 6,850 to 6,900. All right, it's a little bit above that. I think that trading is going to wind down at the end of the year, and it's going to, be closer to 6,850. Question is what's going to happen in Q1. I'm going to do a in-depth analysis of the price structure of different asset classes after the end of the year. We need to see how the end of the year happens. Now, I am longing natural gas and oil. I suspect that when we start hitting Venezuela, we're going to see about a $4 or $5 pop in oil. That's my gut feeling, and I'm trying to position for that. Now, in terms of Bitcoin, if you've noticed, it's having a hard time getting above 90. I think that there's a lot of market manipulation, and I would not be surprised that in 2026, we may see the actual bankruptcy of strategy. It's very possible, especially if Bitcoin starts to fall and starts to, go in the 60 handle or the 50,000 handle. Now imagine if strategy has to start dumping Bitcoin, the price will drop. It'll drop hard. Now the question is, are you going to have these whales that are coming in and going to buy? Well, if the whales keep on coming in and buying, and the retail investor has been hurt because of this drop from 125 to 87, do you think the retail investor is going to come back? Behavioral analysis suggests that once a retail investor and a money manager has been burned heavily on a certain type of stock or a certain type of asset, like Bitcoin, they never go back. They're risk averse. So if the players that are moving Bitcoin are only whales, then it's a manipulated market. There's not liquidity. And if you've been paying attention to a lot of the ETF wrappers, there's money flows leaving. Well, most of those money flows were for retail investors. Bitcoin is very unstable. Very, very, very unstable. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't go up. But I don't believe that it's going to be $1 million. I don't believe it's $500,000. I don't believe that it can even stay above 100,000 without having serious pressure. The only thing that keeps it up are whales manipulating the market. All right, let's go back to Turley.
Acutely aware of this. Here's what's already keeping the mayor-elect awake at night, all right? Every company that leaves New York City, everyone, takes what's called a multiplier effect with it. So JP Morgan's 32,000 employees in Texas, they don't just reduce Manhattan's direct tax base. Those 32,000 workers, they're not eating lunch at Manhattan restaurants.
Exactly.
They're not paying rent.
Exactly. This is exactly what I mean by the economic clustering. If a group of people, businesses and a group of people move away, the economic clustering from the place that they move from starts to die. And you can take this at the geopolitical level. If you ship manufacturing jobs to China, the economic clustering is going to die in the United States. It's the same issue.
On Manhattan apartments, right? They're not shopping at Manhattan stores. They're not using Manhattan's subway system. And as a result, commercial real estate in New York is collapsing. Manhattan office vacancy rates have been climbing for years. And the
the commercial property sales on pace for worst year since 2009. And you think about that. That was in the wake of Lehman. The Lehman crash. Pretty bad. That was like an asteroid that hit New York. And so the commercial real estate is just as bad since 2009. Now, this is CoStar, so I don't know where they got their data from, but let's just assume that they're correct. That's a problem. And people that have let's say residential real estate, and they're trying to sell property in New York, you will be lucky if you had the property for 10 years, you will be lucky to sell at the same price that you paid 10 years ago. Many people have to go lower. So in essence, you lost money. Now you have to remember these properties are $1.2 million, $3, $4, $5 million, right? The problem is that the people aren't here that can pay for that, either in cash or have the income to be able to have a large mortgage, and be able to pay a mortgage that is $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month. Think about that. $20,000 a month? Most people can't afford that. New York is dying. It's dying.
Is accelerating that decline. Lower occupancy means lower property tax revenue. Exactly what the city needs more of, especially if Mandani is going to keep all them promises. But because corporations and wealthy individuals are leaving, the ripple effects are being felt everywhere. Service providers from law firms, consultancies, tech vendors, accounting firms, they're all facing reduced demand. They're all either going to have to downsize or inevitably they're going to follow their clients south. And as a result, the economic doom loop only intensifies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, New York officials have been panicking over this, even before Mandani. They've been rolling out incentives, tax breaks, subsidized rent, streamlined.
Have you noticed that a lot of people that are doing these podcasts, you got to remember, I don't do anything that is scripted, right? This is all freeform. But you notice that, I got a lot of telemetry happening and sometimes it's more noise than anything else. But, you notice that these podcasters, they have books. I don't even know if you read them in the background. Have you noticed that? I don't know. Maybe he's read them. Maybe not. I don't know. But it's so odd to me. I'm just different. I don't know. But it's just like all these podcasters, they either have a big screen, right? Like Alex Jones kind of style, like there's some sort of news network like CNN, or they're like this podcaster that is in a dark setting and there's books in the background. It's just me going on a tangent.
But none of it is working. Executives view these as, frankly, Band-Aids on a structural wound. The real issue isn't a lack of incentives. It's the overall business climate. It's horrible. It's the fact that you now have a radical socialist mayor-elect who claims that businesses and billionaires are the real enemy. They're the real criminals, and he promises to punish them. Why on earth would you stick around for that? And Governor Greg Abbott of Texas.
Need to find the best way to learn math? It's brilliant.org. Brilliant's an effective and fun way to learn. Built for the way your mind actually works.
And Governor Greg Abbott of Texas, he ain't helping New York's cause. Just a couple of months back, he literally rang the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange to celebrate Texas's zero personal and corporate income tax rates and reasonable and predictable regulatory environment, as they call it. New York officials like Governor Hochul actually doubled down. They remained defiant. They said that we're not taking business advice from Greg Abbott. Well, okay, but the joke's on them. That defiance might have played well at a far-left political rally, but every CEO watching that exchange got the message. New York is hostile to business, while Texas openly welcomes it with open arms. Bottom line, this is beyond politics now. This is economic triage. New York lost its relevance, its relative dominance decades ago. But for years, the city limped on, sustained by Wall Street wealth. That era is over. Between 2017 and 2022 alone, 125,000 New Yorkers moved to Florida, taking $9.2 billion in annual income with them. And with the Mamdani migration only getting started, that exodus is only going to get worse. The question is no longer whether New York will decline. The question is how fast and whether that decline becomes irreversible. Until then, the next chapter of New York's economic story is certainly being written, but not in New York. It's being written in Texas and Florida and red states throughout the nation. And unfortunately for Mamdani, those states are winning, and they're winning big. Do you want to ask me your biggest questions and maybe win free merch while you're at it? Well,
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric. This will help to bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Get the lignans. This will help to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and help with your immune system and your endocrine system. Turmeric will also help with your immune system. When you stack these together, they're magical. You know why? Because what this will do is help to slow down the aging process and focus on some important areas of your body. Your immune system, your endocrine system, bringing down inflammation at the cerebral level will protect your neurons, and bringing down inflammation at the vascular level will reduce plaque formation. So with proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation, you can slow down the aging process. And a key part of this is soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation, detoxifying your body, boosting up your immune system. Please go to my store, get the turmeric and the lignans, take them every day. And you'll also get added benefit because this brings down inflammation. This will also help with joints, joint health. If you are sore in a joint, it'll also help to recover after a workout, so your recovery time is a lot less. And if you're not feeling well, because it's the winter season, taking these will help for you to get through it faster and with less severity. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, I want to listen to Bloomberg's podcast on consumer debt. Neiman Marcus. I think they're going to be talking about Neiman Marcus.
Every entrepreneur needs to understand how money moves, but that's especially true for small businesses. It's why MasterCard can be leaders in tech and finance to help these.
Consumers are showing in our monthly surveys that they're getting less and less confident in the economy as the year wears on. And there's several factors that are driving that. One is the job outlook. The biggest reason, though, however, is inflation and the continued pressure on essential categories like food, housing, even debt now is sort of emerging as a topic for consumers. And so they are trying to muscle through this environment as best as they can. And that is weighing on the retail sector, and it's weighing a little bit on the holiday season as well.
But we're seeing some pretty good numbers out of some of the retailers. I mean, I'm seeing, probably 3-4% retail sales growth here in the holiday season, with the e-commerce even higher than that. It seems like consumers are still spending though.
They are, Paul, and they are trying to spend on the holiday and kind of keep that basket together as best as they can. But there's some underlying factors that make the headline data a little bit more nuanced. So the majority of what we're seeing is that those year-over-year gains are driven primarily by price actions and not volume. And in fact, in our headline outlook for the holiday season, we sort of forecasted about a 2 to 3% year-over-year growth rate. I think it's coming a little bit higher, which is good news, but
I think the S&P 500 is going to end at about 6,850 to 6,900. Now, if money starts to flow in to average homes because of tax refunds, better job prospects, controlled inflation, then we're going to see the equity market rally in 2026 to maybe 8,000. But if we start seeing Inflation starting to tick up again. Job prospects not very good. People are going to retrench, and what's going to happen is that we may have a stock market that is at maybe 7,400 for the S&P 500. If it's really bad, it'll be below the 6,850. But I suspect that we're going to be closer to the 7,400 range, because I think that we're going to limp along in 2026. I'm very, very worried when September comes in 2026 that there is an amalgamation of different situations starting to emerge. War, economic instability, over-indebtedness, infighting in politics between the Republicans and the Democrats. It's going to be a midterm election year. So you have all these things that are starting to happen that we may actually have a year that is very problematic. And it may seem okay for the first 2 quarters, but as we get into the third quarter, we start seeing that something's changing. So it may be good the first 2 quarters. Then you got to worry about Q3, Q4, and especially going into Q1 of 2027. I'm very worried about this. Then you start hearing about the white papers from the PLA, People's Liberation Army from China. All right? They want Taiwan. They want to make their move. That's around 2027. On top of, the consumer confidence that wasn't that great this year.
That is driven by price. Almost 2/3 of that is driven by price and not volume. So, as a retail sector, you like to see more or volume going out the door historically. And so, again, it's a little bit softer. I think part of that is certain chains have really resonated with consumers this holiday season. They've gotten the value equation better aligned to expectations. And there is some channel switching happening. That appears in our survey as well. We're seeing that increase as consumers want to sort of shop what they've always shopped for, but get a better price for it in whatever channel is best suited for them.
Yeah, we were talking about somebody earlier, talking about shopping earlier in the show and how consumers have become much more intentional about what it is they're spending their money on. But let's talk about restaurants and bars and how we're spending on that. I mean, did you talk about that in the survey, and what did you guys find out?
We do, and that sector in particular is getting facing much more significant headwinds because it's the first category consumers repeatedly tell us they're going to pull back on, and indeed we're seeing that in some of the top line numbers. Albeit there are a couple really exciting sort of turnaround stories in the sector that I think shows that point about aligning with consumers. But in general, consumers, the number one category they want to pull back on is eating out, particularly at higher end establishments. And so when they're paying more for groceries and the basics, it kind of makes sense that they would switch to more in-home eating. And so that really is putting a pressure on restaurants. In the QSR space, you're seeing a lot of revamped emphasis on value and value menus to try and stem that tide. But it has been a tough year for the restaurant sector in general. And we don't expect that to change much going into 2026.
Well, what's typically an anecdote to consumer spending concerns? I'm not sure it's the Fed cutting interest rates by 25 or 50 basis points. And it seems like the economy is essentially fully employed. What needs to change here?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One is that they have to have more confidence. And, with all the change in the policies coming out of the federal government, with concerns about inflation really showing up in their, the receipts, and some concerns about the economic outlook and a little bit of AI. It's sort of a psychological aspect to this that's really weighing on the sector. However, there are some real economic drivers because a lot of the GDP growth we're seeing is driven by what we call the 3 A's. So that's affluent consumers, that's asset price realization in the stock market, and I'm forgetting the third A. It's AI-driven investment, which is fueling the the sort of the stock price appreciation. So that's propping up a lot of this, and affluent consumers in particular are really need to kind of continue that spending pattern as we go into 2026 if we're going to continue at the levels we're seeing today.
And with in terms of how we're paying for these things, and consumers taking on debt, especially during the holiday season, I know that they're using a lot more buy now, pay later platforms, and that could be troubling down the road.
Yeah, that is a concern for us to monitor. And savings in general has declined since Liberation Day. Again, as consumers try and buy what they've always purchased, but in the face of higher prices. So we've gone from a savings economy to a debtor economy, and that shows up in the macro data. That is a potential risk in the outlook for 2026, because the question is how long can they keep doing that? And those debt levels have sort of increased generally across all income segments as well. So it's not just centered in one income segment. We're not reaching sort of crisis levels by any stretch, but it is another potential headwind as we cross into next year.
All right. I want to go to the Hill talking about teens' mistrust in news media rising. Half believe journalism ethics dead. Well, maybe there's some hope. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and detoxify your body. Do some resistance training, take the Gladiator Barley. And it's a great way to slow down the aging process. Make sure that you build some back muscles so you get a straighter spine. You're building denser vertebrae. You're going to improve your lymphatic flow. So that will help with your immune system. And you're improving your venous return flow. When you do that, that's going to help with your cardiovascular system. Now, make sure you do those back exercises, but take Gladiator Barley, build muscle. And by bringing down inflammation, detoxifying your body, and soaking up free radicals, you're going to recover quicker. You're going to help your immune system, your endocrine system, your vascular system, and your brain function. This is perfect. Take it every day. And take Myotrol. Now, you can take them separately, but they work really well together. They're synergistic. Gladiator Barley has the ingredients to build muscle, the protein that you need. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle. When you're older, your gene expression goes down for muscle building and maintaining because your epigenetics change when you get older. Well, if you slow down the aging process, your epigenetics stay more youthful. Myotrol will help with the youthful expression to help build muscle and to maintain muscle. It also helps the health of your mitochondria, so you have the ATP to maintain that muscle. This has polyphenols, lignins, and flavonoids to help with the gene expression to build muscle. Again, you can take them separately, but it's synergistic to get the max benefit. This is a great way to slow down the aging process, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Now, if you're an athlete, younger or older, you can benefit from this by doing your strength training for your sport and taking the Myotrol and the Gladiator Barley to help build muscle for your sport. It's a great way. I wish this was available when I was in triathlons, right? When I was in my 20s and 30s. But this is very powerful stuff. Take it. It works. It slows down the aging process. All right, let's listen into the Hill.
Biased, boring, bad. These are some of the negative B words that 84% of teens use to describe today's media in a new survey by the News Literacy Project. The survey documented teens aged 13 to 18's negative attitude about the news. Other words the group used to describe the media were crazy, boring, fake, depressing, or scary.
Around half of teens also believe that journalists pay sources or do favors for them, either always, almost always, or often. The teens also think that reporters make up things like quotes and give special treatment to advertising. Roughly 60% of teens say that journalists take videos or photos out of context. And strangely, only around 1/3 of the surveyed teens believe journalists follow basic tenets of the craft like confirming facts before reporting them or correcting errors.
This sobering survey rings alarm bells about the younger generation whose minds are very much still forming. Kat Murphy, an aspiring journalist and college student, told the AP there's very little movement in the direction of going to where people are, as opposed to expecting them to come to where you are. The only way to turn it around is going to be to switch to doing things that captivate people today, as opposed to captivating people 20 years ago. Harsh.
Very
harsh stuff.
They obviously haven't been watching Rising.
No,
that's clearly
we check our facts. We are unbiased. We give it to you from both directions, as it were. That's we're totally wrong. So sorry.
Well, good for that.
Anyway.
Anyway,
yes.
So young people's views of media,
which we care about so much.
We do. We're
17 to 18-year-olds.
That's our demographic.
Yeah, we're desperate for their approval.
Yes. I mean, look, the fact that people of that age find the media boring is not particularly surprising to me. I think if you're in the middle of adolescence, you're probably not tuning into much news media in the traditional sense, at least, very much at all. Now, are they trusting kind of TikTok news people? That would be one of my curiosities about this. Is it about the package, the medium, or the message?
I doubt that 13 to 18-year-olds are less informed today about politics and news and world events and things going on today, current events. There's no way they're less informed. They're inarguably. I can't prove. I have to point. I don't have a study I can point to, but they have to be encountering casually more current events programming because of social media than ever before. It used to be when I was on that age, the Channel 1 program. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, but
they did like a pre-taped half an hour of news that would play in the morning so that we'd be up to date on a small number of stories. Actually, some of the people involved in that did become. Maria Menounos got her start on Channel 1. She's a big entertainment reporter.
When I was like a very small kid, there was a very long-running show on BBC called Newsround, and it was a news bulletin for kids, but it was legitimately a legitimate journal.
We'd have a time for kids distributed in my 5th grade class every now and then. Y2K sounds very scary, that kind of thing. Now they're consuming news content inadvertently all the time on reels on social media. That's a good thing. And that is news, and that's.
Well, it is. It's actually news as opposed to just somebody pontificating about what their opinion is about the news. Not that we're necessarily against opinion journalism here, of course, but it's just that. I mean, yes, there has obviously been a breakdown of traditional news and the authority of traditional news, and that's never coming back, and we've spoken about that before. But is it going to be replaced by actual news that is packaged in a way that is compelling to younger audiences? Or is it just going to be supplanted by a sort of virtual watercolor where it's just people shooting their mouths off all the time?
Right. That is the problem.
We don't want that.
People do have some misconceptions about how, more traditional journalists, and that what we're doing is non-traditional, but we work on The Hill, which has a corporate ownership, which is a traditional media company, which does have rigorous standards, to be clear. We do not give our opinions in exchange for money from a specific person. Of course, advertising is part of it, but there's an editorial wall between advertisers and us. What the advertisers do not have any say over what and that is actually, even though I think our viewers can tell I'm very favorable to influencers and the new media trends, there is more danger among the people who are not part of establishment media being captured by an advertiser, or really just more likely their audience, knowing exactly what the people want to hear and thus saying.
Yeah, I do think that audience.
Yeah, that's you guys, not us.
That audience capture thing is a real.
Audience capture is a big problem with podcasters, because if you say something that your audience doesn't like, they'll just unfollow you because they want confirmational bias. I saw this during 2020. It was very prevalent. If you tell someone that, that's different than their worldview, they can't handle it. The key is to stay with veritas, stay with truth, stay with the facts. because they will always lead to the best path, not opinion. Now, when you're trying to speculate, then it's a educated reasoning of why you think one way versus of another. And usually I talk in probabilities, probably because of my math and engineering background. But the thing is that I view things of the unknown based on a probability distribution. But if you start having a podcast where you're placating to your audience all the time, you're not being truthful. And I think that it's important to just stick to the facts. Now, of course, an individual may have some bias, but be true to yourself. Be true to the facts. Don't placate to the audience. But many people, they listen to a podcaster to try to get confirmational bias, not to be informed. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. This will help to improve your brain function, help with your cardiovascular system, slow down the aging process, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, help with musculature, help with your immune system, your endocrine system. It's very powerful. It is a cornerstone of my anti-aging protocol. You should be taking this every day. This is a month supply. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. Get this, take it every day. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. I'm eating hummus, and I mix it with the hummus. It's really simple. Very powerful. And within 72 hours, you're going to feel the effects of it. You're going to have a steady burn of energy that's going to last throughout the whole day, no spiking. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to be more active because your metabolism is revved up. You're going to lose weight. You're going to be more active. You'll build muscle. You'll get further gains in the gym by taking this. Over time, what you're going to notice is that you don't have the brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate. And taking this every day, week after week, month after month, you're going to actually look younger. You're going to feel younger. You're going to be younger. Why? Because you're bringing down inflammation. You're soaking up free radicals. You're improving your different systems, like your cardiovascular system, your brain function, your musculature, your metabolism. Go to my store, get this. It's really important. This is super powerful. Take it every day.
That's the big phenomenon. It's not that whatever, I don't know, British Petroleum is going to come in and take out ads and we're going to start saying, these gas regulations today. I would say that anyway.
Naturally, but it's about serving the thing to people because you're just catering to what people want to hear, which itself is not really news. Now, do recent trends spell trouble for the GOP in the midterms? We have a guest. Talk about that next. Stick around to see what he has to say.
All right. I'm going to pivot over to Bloomberg.
Pandemic up. So that's kind of what I've heard here. There is some selected conversions of office through, and there's some have been a bit successful. I've seen some cool stories on that. So we'll keep an eye.
Those look pretty cool, actually.
They do. So we'll see how that plays out. Coming up, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Hardware Network Analyst on the PC market outlook in the year ahead. Everybody seems to move new PCs, so why not? S&P up 23, the Dow up 260. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
All right. I don't know what this is. I've never heard the term before, manosphere. So let's just listen into what this is from the Hill.
Stop being passed over for promotions. Get what you deserve. I'm going to teach you how to be more powerful.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. Of course, we hope you're having a happy holiday season and a Merry Christmas season. We just have a terrific show for you today. Hello, Niall.
Hello, Rob. Are you feeling festive?
You know it. I'm the most
You're
festive
Mr.
man
Festive.
there. They call me Mr. Grinch.
Well, we have all the accoutrements, so we're good.
For a while now. When set up plants. I like these Christmas trees. I got a little tree up in my apartment that has been decorated, but there's a light on the tree that won't light on one side. So Santa had to come from his workshop and fix it, by which I mean a run to CVS and a restringing of said lights.
I know your great hero, Dan Paul, always likes Festivus on the area of grievances.
Yes.
But you're the Festivus Paul, Shay, Suave.
I air my grievances on a daily basis with those around me and with our viewers. And so I think people are well aware of the things that annoy me in life.
Get the grievances out of it.
Yes.
Anyway, it's good to be with you. A new study from the marketing consultant Precision Strategies makes some interesting conclusions about what it refers to as the Manosphere Index.
The study attempts to shed light on how Gen Z and millennial men in America feel about masculinity and the sources of information that can contribute to their feelings. The intro to the study reads, "The dominant narrative is simple. America's men, especially young men, are in crisis, drifting rightward, being radicalized online, but this one note framing obscures more than it reveals. It flattens a complex reality into a single storyline, leaving campaigns, brands, and institutions without the tools to engage men authentically. The truth is, men today are navigating a convergence of pressures, economic instability, algorithmic media, and evolving identity framework that cut across race and generation and class."
One of the primary focuses of the survey is YouTube. The study's authors argue that website has become so influential that it's now functioning similar to primetime television for Gen Z.
Yeah.
And they say there's a correlation between the amount of time spent on YouTube and how controversial the content they consume is. Quote, "Nearly 9 in 10 men, 86%, use YouTube at some point during the week, and almost 60 are heavy users, spending 6 or more hours on the platform. What was once a video site now operates as a hybrid space, part news source, part classroom, part entertainment hub, and part cultural stage.
Yeah.
It has effectively replaced the traditional primetime model for men, becoming a place where information, commentary, entertainment, and identity lie. A majority of men, 57%, agreed that, quote, the content recommended to them gets more and more controversial over time, and millennial and Gen Z men reported this at the highest levels.
The survey also documents the proliferation of influential podcasters, especially on the right. Goes hand in hand with YouTube, as many podcasts also upload video versions of their episodes to the site. The study says this convergence of podcasting and video content is likely reinforcing YouTube's dominance among men as the platform becomes both their primary viewing space and their preferred venue for long-form creator commentary. And the voices they trust most, not traditional broadcasters, but these creator-driven commentators, like all these names you're very familiar with: Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Stephen A. Smith, and my favorite, Candy Cane, Candace Owens.
Your best friend.
Voices they trust the most? Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, Ben Shapiro, Stephen Smith. I don't even know who that is. Candace Owens. Do you really trust them? You got a pothead. You got a college dropout. You got one that is, super focused on Zionism. I don't know who Smith is. I don't know. Candace Owens is just crazy, batshit crazy. Most trusted? Now we wonder why our world is in shit.
On YouTube or elsewhere.
I mean, this is obviously true. I say it over and over again. YouTube has won. YouTube is the model of the future. That's true for women too, but it's more pronounced for men for a variety of reasons. Yes, our audience, we know from the analytics, skews very male. I think YouTube is a great thing. It's just why we're a YouTube-focused product, where Rising historically became big, what was from the YouTube version of the product. It mirrors I'm a middle-aged male. You're a middle-aged male.
I think you're unfair in your age, and you're describing yourself that way makes me feel quite elegant.
I'm an old man, and you're ancient. Yes, I too watch. I don't watch like an unhealthy amount of YouTube, but I listen to audiobooks when I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
But if I'm between books, as I am now, I finished what I was listening to, and I haven't picked my next book yet.
Yeah.
So then, while I'm at the gym,
this is interesting. All right, for the ones that watch my show, all right, based on the analytics, 35 to 44-year-olds, about 5%. 45 to 54-year-olds, 40.9%. 55 to 64-year-olds, 31%, and 65 plus, 23%. Gender, 87.5% male, 12.5% female. Interesting.
I want to watch. I want to listen to like entertainment commentary or like movie review commentary or TV reviews. And for my pick, even though I'm listening, I'm not watching, is YouTube.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not seeing them, and I want one that's long enough that I'm going to finish my workout and not have to pick a new one.
Right.
So I think that lends. I think creators, well, we're creators on some level, are moving more toward. I mean, the model that Rogan's already adopted, which is just talk as long as you can. And people want to listen during a commute, during a workout, while they're folding lawn.
I think that I can do a show longer than Joe Rogan, regularly. Actually, I have. Because his shows are like 2.5, 3 hours long. I've done shows that are 5 or 6 hours long. Now, most of my shows lately have been like 3.5, 4 hours.
While they're making dinner in the times of the day where it's nice to have something on. Yeah. That used to be the TV. You used to just put on the TV, but TV's interrupted by commercials, which are annoying.
And that's the reason why I do my show. I do this show that you're watching. This is the reason why I do it. It's about us watching what's going on in the news, and it's interactive. Maybe entertaining. And you start to learn about things. Like what's going on in politics, what's going on in international affairs, what's going on in the stock market, what's going on with your health.
To your point about like using YouTube for things that are typically all auditory experiences, I actually use it a lot for music, and it's partly because I'm just a big
I do too.
Yeah, but it's also that, of course, like you can get the live versions of various songs that you might like, and you don't necessarily have to be watching the screen. I prefer the actual dynamics of live music to studio recorded music, and so there's that. But then that brings me to the other point, which is, the idea in this survey that people who peruse, I guess, somewhat controversial content get served more and more controversial
content. Here's the feedback loop with this whole open system, and there's, when you have feedback loops, positive or negative, in a system, an emergent property can take hold that is unexpected. If there's a negative bias in what's on the selection timeline for YouTube or even on X, and there's too many commercials, eventually there will be a negative feedback loop where people will start to plug out and go to something else. Like I've noticed that there's certain people that I will not listen to because I just don't. I want my stream
of things that I want to know to be curated, and I want the least amount of ads, and I want information, not op-ed. Now that may be because I'm older. Maybe that's because of just the intelligence level. I don't know. All right. But the thing is that I think that there's going to be a negative feedback loop in YouTube that's going to push people to going to only certain types of podcasters. And in some cases, it may drive people away from YouTube and to other platforms. I think a small set of the population may actually plug out of social media altogether and go back to just reading books, right? Just reading books, right? I'm almost done with this one from Ian McEwan, which is actually a pretty good book. It's a novel. Here's another book that I'm reading, Autocrats and Democrats versus Democrats, talking about geopolitics between China, Russia, and America. And then I'm slowly chipping away at, which is a very good book, about the Roman Republican letters, right, about Cicero. So I think more people are going to start gravitating to maybe learning the old way, and that is reading a book. You know? But in terms of entertainment, they're moving away from the typical cable TV, and YouTube has become the typical cable TV now. So there's going to be a group of people slowly that will, just as they moved away from cable and went to YouTube, they're going to move away from YouTube to something else. Now, what that something else is, I'm not sure. I think they're going to be moving away to a place where there's less advertisement and less bias, less hate, less negativity. But it's going to take time before that emerges. But eventually, wherever the crowd goes, it gets mutated in such a way where there's more negativity, more ads, and eventually you have to go to someplace else. That exodus hasn't happened yet from YouTube, but it will happen, just like it happened for TV, for cable TV.
I would just really like to sort of scrutinize the specifics of that, because is it just like if I go and listen to Bruce Springsteen, who I know you dislike, but that's neither here nor there, and then I get served more Bruce Springsteen videos or people off that musical ilk.
Bruce Springsteen actually is some of the music is really good, and what is fascinating is that his career was supposed to be, kind of like a spin-off or a new version of Bob Dylan. The Bob Dylan of my generation really would be Springsteen, not Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was more aligned with the boomers, the baby boomer generation. Gen X, I would say, is more Springsteen, all right? Or John Mellencamp. Now, John Mellencamp was supposed to be a spin-off. John Cougar Mellencamp, all right, was supposed to be a spin-off of Springsteen. So all three of them are a little bit, they have a little bit of that country, but some rock. Bob Dylan had that folk kind of sound, right? So I think from an artistic point of view, it's actually, Springsteen is really good, all right? Not all of his music is great, but when it comes to his personality and his politics, that's where I draw a line. I think he needs to just like Gene Simmons said from Kiss, if you're a performer, you should just shut the fuck up in terms of politics. And I think that Springsteen needs to learn that lesson. Another person that needs to learn that lesson is George Clooney.
So is it simply that that's what the algorithm does? To suggest that people who like these quasi-controversial political commentators get served more of them suggests a sinister influence, whereas it might just be a neutral, here's
Also-
what you like.
So this idea has been debunked in the past. What the idea is that no, you're searching for Bruce Springsteen, but then eventually they'll give you some video about how Bruce Springsteen has gone woke,
Right.
and then a video about wokeness, and then a video about Alex Jones.
And then
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
But of course, that does happen. But the more likely thing is that you're watching a video about Bruce Springsteen going woke, and then it just gives you Bruce. Like it goes the other way too.
Yeah, yeah.
So the idea that it's always just further radicalizing you. I mean, there's controversial content out there because we're living through more controversial political times.
Right.
The actions that the government under Donald Trump is taking are controversial, whether you like them or not. So there is edgier and more nastier and more. I mean, the political conversations do in some level match the times we're living through.
Well, that's certainly true, but there does seem to be an increase, particularly among young men, of sort of isolation, dissatisfaction, alienation, and I've aged out of that generation a long time ago. I'm not sure what.
A big part of it is that they're not outside playing sports when they're kids. They're indoors playing video games. So that's a big part of it. There's I would say that there's a problem with their endocrine system because of the food they're eating. Maybe they're over-vaxxed, right? So they just seem more unhealthy. And because you think about it, these kids, they went through COVID. Some of them went through Lehman. The stresses in their home with the Lehman crash. All right. Some of them may have been very young, but may remember 9/11. So they've gone through their whole life through 3 really big events that could cause some problems in the household. All right. So you have that. You have the over stress of trying to get into a good school. The stress with kids today are far more than it was for Gen X. Big time. It was way easier to get into Harvard in 1980s than it is now. I mean, I think the acceptance rate is like 3% now, and it used to be in the 5s or 6% range. So it's harder. Everything's harder now. Plus, everything's digitized. All the applications are digitized and everything, So just filling out paperwork online is just a chore. And their whole life is like this. I mean, we remember being in Gen X. You filled out a form and you mailed it, right? Or you handed it in because there wasn't the internet, all right? So their lives there's more stress in them, right? So their behaviors are going to be different. They're going to be skewed. But I think that we need kids to just be kids. We need kids to go out and be in sports. Also, you have these home owners associations, the HOAs, that don't really, that try to curtail the playgrounds or the grounds for kids to play. So there's lack of space, especially if they're in an urban setting to play. There's not enough parks for sports. If you're living in an urban setting, you don't have a garage or a basement. And those are the places where, that's where a garage band is. You learn an instrument, you play in a band, in a garage. Well, if you're living in New York, where are you going to be a band? There's no garage bands. That's part of the reason why the music sucks. Because the 15-minute city has beat that out of society. Learning how to work on cars. Well, that's in a garage. Well, if you don't have a car or if you don't have a garage, how are you going to fix a car? See, there's these things that are like, moments of passage for the youth that don't exist anymore today. So they're confused. They don't know what to do. They got too much, so what they do is they get sucked into the hate, get sucked into the black hole of hate through these social media. And who benefits from this? Well, you got Zuckerberg making billions of dollars. You got Larry Ellison. You have Larry Page. You have Tim Cook. All these people that are tech bros, they're making the money. Meanwhile, there's damage that's taking place on the youth. Maybe long-term psychological damage. But you got the tech bros making billions of dollars, and they take those billions of dollars that they're making and they'll buy a $350 million yacht. They'll buy 6 homes. They'll build a nuclear bunker. It's a problem.
Early cost back, but obviously a lot of life has moved at least into online spaces. And from my 51-year-old perspective, I do wonder if the lack of in-person interaction is part of that.
Well, the funny thing, when we talk about social
let's
media,
think about this. Now, I don't know Bobby what his age is. He's probably in his 30s, but his co-star, 51 years old. 51. I'm older than him. This is the point I'm making about following my anti-aging protocol. Now, I think he's Irish, so maybe that's the problem. But here is the issue. You have people out there that are not taking the advice that I have. The protocol works. It's very simple. Bringing down inflammation, soaking up free radicals, improving your immune system, boosting up your energy levels will slow down the aging process. You don't need to be a tech bro that's spending $2 million like Brian Johnson to try to slow down aging. It's really simple. Proper diet, proper exercise, balancing, stretching, some cardio, more resistance training, mindfulness or spirituality, learning new things, drinking filtered water, staying away from processed foods, proper supplementation. That's all you need. You don't need to be a tech bro, spend $2 million trying to change your epigenetics. It works. So you got a 51-year-old that looks literally like he's in his 60s. And yet I'm older and I look a lot younger. Look at Alex Jones. Alex Jones is younger than I am. He sure as hell doesn't look like it.
young people, it is actually more of a harm to female issue because men, a lot of them play tons of video games. And video games, while maybe not a sufficient replacement for in-person interaction or sports or doing something physical, video games do have both a literary component if you're playing narrative games and a social component if you're playing these collaborative games that so many people are. And it is healthier than some, like learning, like not learning, but we're not gonna be a very young kid, but problem solving in a group, which is a social and useful skill.
Yeah, are you a big gaming guy?
I am thought to be, but I really am not. I'm a fan of Nintendo, and I have a Switch and a Switch 2, and I play the new Nintendo games that come out, the new Mario and Zelda games, but I'm not like an expert in gaming culture. I don't play a lot of the online collaborative, I don't play any of those, but I play a lot of Mario Kart and Smash Brothers and Mario Party and the new Zelda games, and I'm huge fans of those.
Learn something every day. Great. Artificial intelligence is on the rise, but are we ready to embrace it? We'll talk about that next. Get around.
Yes. It has been a while.
All right, let's listen to hell about McDonald's and then we'll close it out.
While artificial intelligence is rapidly getting integrated into our daily lives, people seem to have mixed feelings about it.
McDonald's Netherlands recently released an ad that was entirely AI generated for the holidays and faced backlash from some online users. According to multiple reports, McDonald's Netherlands first turned off the YouTube comment section and then pulled down the video entirely.
The 45-second ad consists of seemingly AI-generated people experiencing bad luck amid the Christmas season. The song that plays over the ad is a cheeky rendition of "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year," with the lyrics being changed to "It's the Most Terrible Time of the Year." McDonald's Netherlands told Fox Business that this moment serves as an important learning experience, that's what they all say, as they explore the effective use of AI.
Conservative commentator Matt Walsh felt very strongly about the ad. He wrote an quote, "It sucks. It's awful. There's no artistry, no wit, no charm, no warmth, no humanity. You can tell it's AI from a million miles away. I hate it. You should hate it. We should relentlessly."
This is important because this couples really well with the previous video. If you notice on YouTube, a lot of stuff, especially on documentaries about biographies or about summaries of books or history, they're starting to be generated by AI. It's like an AI generation script and videos or pictures. And you notice that it's starting to become like sloppy. So there's this term called AI slop. So another negative feedback loop for YouTube. If there's too many content creators creating AI slop, people will stop watching YouTube.
Mock and deride and bully anyone or any company that uses AI like this.
Goodness, he's very strong feelings about.
File free in the app if you didn't file with us last year. Just file with TurboTax Do It Yourself by February 28th. No matter your tax situation, get the TurboTax app now.
We now have a Department of Justice that is essentially the president's political enforcer. It's a huge change. It's a very dangerous change.
Goodness, he's very strong feelings about the matter. On a related note, actor Leonardo DiCaprio recently weighed in on the use of AI in visual art. In an interview with Time magazine, DiCaprio said, quote, "I think anything that is going to be authentically thought of as art has to come from the human being. Otherwise, haven't you heard these songs that are mashups that are just absolutely brilliant? And you go, oh my God, this is Michael Jackson doing The Weekend. Or this is funk from a Tribe Called Quest song, Bonita Applebum, done in, a sort of Al Green soul song voice, and it's brilliant. And you go, cool, but then it gets its 15 minutes of fame, and it just dissipates into the ether of other internet junk. There's no anchoring.
If you listen to a really good song, for some reason you gravitate to it and you repeat it, you listen to it multiple times, and it becomes a favorite, or at least a short-term favorite. But there's something that's activated in the brain when you hear something new and refreshing when it comes to music. But if it feels formulaic, if it feels that there's a redundancy, that it's a typical music trope, if there's some sort of musical score that's bromide, then
you won't repeat it. So I haven't heard anything that's AI generated music that is actually, wow, that's something that you should repeat multiple times. Like, perfect example. When let's say when the Beatles came out, it was like refreshing. There was something new about it. Or when the Rolling Stones came out and their sound that was paying homage to the blues music, but had a different sound to it. Or Pink Floyd, especially the Wall album. Or let's say, Born in the USA by Springsteen. There was something like there was something different about it, right? People kept on playing it and playing it and playing it and playing it, right? You don't have that with AI generation. There's something, even Nirvana with Team Spirit, when that came out, that sound from the guitar, there's something different about it. It wasn't formulaic. It's like AI can't make that transition from the hairband days of, let's say, Guns N' Roses and Whitesnake and even Def Leppard into the alternative sound of Pearl Jam and Nirvana. It doesn't have that creative ability. It can replicate a sound, but it can't make that big leap. Like late 1980s to early 1990s. It doesn't have the capability. And that's what that new sound, but those new sounds come from the experimentation of playing instruments, learning how to play the instrument, playing with a group in a garage band kind of setting, eventually getting better and better, and eventually becoming, a superstar in terms of music. AI doesn't do that. AI will make a Nirvana song, but AI can't create Nirvana.
There's no humanity to it, as brilliant as it is.
And Aline van der Velden, creator of the viral AI actress Tilly Norwood, says how she thinks Tilly will fit in the world of film. Velden added, I think it's very important for the creative industry to take this tech and control it. I'm part of the creative industry, so I want us to be in control of the guidelines and the ethics around this and it not be imposed by the tech industry. I mean, a lot of this should really just be governed by how consumers react to the product. If people were having a negative reaction to McDonald's AI-generated ad, that's their right to feel that there's something hollow. And many of these AI videos are easily recognized as such, because there's a hollowness to it, particularly when the images start moving, and it's fine to reject that. We might get to the place where it's so advanced that you can't tell the difference, and then, sorry,
We're all doomed.
We're all doomed. We'll just, we'll use the AI, the technology, to apply ourselves more creatively in other ways. I mean, you have in movies, in large fantasy battles, you have CGI generated soldiers, troops in the background. They're fake. Using AI to do that instead of whatever technology we used before, it's a difference of degrees, really. It's not. I don't think AI is in the near future going to replace, like the Leonardo DiCaprio role. And he owns his likeness, so if you try to exactly rip him off, then you should sue for that. That is stealing. You can't represent it as Leo, but have it not be that. So that's, I don't have any problem fighting back against that aspect of it.
In relation to the McDonald's ad, I wonder how much of the backlash was because of it being AI and how much was simply because of it.
All right, we're going to play the McDonald's ad, right? I found it. And then, I'll give you I have not seen this. Okay, so there. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil. C60 needs to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day every day. And what this will do is soak up free radicals, help with your immune system, your endocrine system, your cardiovascular system, even your brain function. It helps the health of the mitochondria, reduces stress in your tissues, soaks up free radicals, and slows down the aging process. Stacks really well with resveratrol. It helps also the basal layer to improve your skin. You will feel the effects of this within 2 months, taking it every day, a teaspoon a day. And if you just look at a before and after picture of taking C60 every day for 1 year, in 1 year, you will look younger compared to your baseline. So please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach. All right, let's play the ad. I have not seen this. All right.
It's the worst into choking is burn to in chaos. It feels like it's the most terrifying time of the year. See away from the madness, the lights and the cheer, and hide in the darkness till January.
It's kind of crappy, but I'm sure it was done on purpose because I've seen AI much better than that. But, you know, the reality of the situation is AI is going to get better, and we're going to have a blurring of the line of human creativity versus AI creativity. We're not there yet with AI, but it's getting close. The thing is that it had to be curated and chunked, right? It had to be done in pieces and curated by a human being and stitched together, and and what it should be, right? I'm sure they didn't just ask an AI, just generate an ad and then they published it. I'm sure it went through a committee of people, right? But technologies are going to get better, and that blurring of the line of what that creativity is. But there's something that is human, something inherently human that's very hard to code when it comes to creativity and jumping into a new genre, a new era, a new way of doing things. Let's say from the Renaissance period to, let's say, the period of Monet, right? Or, the Impressionists to the modern art period, or the postmodern art period. There's something different. There's something that happens, right? So hopefully mankind is going to say, you know what, that's AI generated, I'm not that interested. There may be a negative feedback that's just saying, it's AI, I don't want it. Like, I don't watch AI material. Like, if I'm looking for something on YouTube that is about, let's say, a particular subject on history, and it's AI generated, I almost never listen to it. Once it's AI generated, it's like, so I have an aversion to it. I don't know if other people will have that behavior. I suspect that a good, decent amount of the society will, and because of that negative feedback loop, less AI slop will be created. But if there's so much AI slop that's created, you have to question about the validity of the content. You have to question about the artistic ability of the content. And what people are doing is they just generate AI slop and try to get ad revenue, and it doesn't matter. And they just populate garbage. And then the whole the whole platform turns into slop. YouTube's at risk of having that. Unless they create an algorithm that knows that it's AI slop and it keeps it out of your feed. Who knows? So that's the end of my program. Thank you for listening. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the supplements, stack them the way I've been telling you to stack them day after day after day, and you'll slow down the aging process. And not only that, you will have a boosted up immune system to be able to weather the storms like the winter season that we're in right now. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.